Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in here, Murder Church, on a Sunday morning, per the usual, 9 a.m. Wake up! What's going on? Getting everybody in here. Send out some notifications. Send out an X, a tweet, whatever you want to call it. Please reshare that. That'd be amazing. We're going to get started here this morning with episode 34, Phil Spector Hollywood Murder Trial. Continuing on this avenue of absolute madness. I got my camera back, got my camera working again, so we're back looking like I did. I've got ready to rock and roll. Let's go, baby. Let's go.
Let's rock.
Holy shit. What is up? What is going on? The old camera's back. The old camera has been fixed, finally. I had to order another cable, messed with it yesterday, and cross fingers, knock on wood, as of right now, it's looking pretty good. Holy shit, did we just get portaled? Jay just sent some folks in here. Welcome in here, everybody. Good morning, good morning. Tara and Dusty. I appreciate it. First of all, let me get the chat set up here so we will be ready to rock and roll. Seeking Justice coming through here. Thank you so much. I like that every Saturday night, once I post my link, they always go and let folks know, man. That's really cool. Like, I love that. That's so fucking cool. Nicest folks ever in this community right here. I'm just setting it up so I can get the chat going. I'm glad Botrix woke up this morning. Hit that like on the way in, just like my friend Jay just told you. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate all your help, brother, man. You're the fucking man, dude. I hope you're having a great weekend. Everybody in here. Hell yeah. There we go. New person right here because of Jay. Come in, referred by Jay. Carla Cole, welcome in here. And the way we start out Murder Church, we do two episodes of Murder Church a week. I'd stream 4 times live a week. But Murder Church is a little bit different. We have a lot of fun here. We talk about a lot of horrible shit, but I try to make it as fun as possible. And we are respectful, of course, of the victims on this channel. But one thing that we do, and we start here every single week, every episode of Murder Church, is the bells. There we go. Are those working? No, they're not. Hold on. See, when I was messing with all this stuff, forgot to turn that back on, which is my sound effects. Give me 1 second. Into the bells there for just a second, but the way we do this, though, let me get these on here. We start Murder Church with these beautiful bells. Hold on, now I've already lost my thing. Stream Deck, there it is. And we're gonna do it one more time. Boom! The thunderous bells through the church, let the congregation know we are here. Love it. Everyone in here. Jay, again, thank you, dude. Appreciate it, man. Jay, Simi Sharp coming in here. Kai, Sheila Duffy, Tara and Dusty, Joanne, of course, Boji OG, showing some love. That's what I'm talking about, guys. The best community in the world. Dizzy, right here. Carla D, what is going on? Sharon T, referred by Jay again, another new person. If you do come in, please hit the subscribe. Like the stream as well. Helps us out. Beautiful people. Kelly Bobelli. Another new name, Annie R. Wow, absolutely unbelievable. Unfreaking believable. Like, the coolest freaking people ever. Already got 50 people. This is crazy. All right, let's rock and roll. We're going to jump right in here. A couple of things I want to take care of real quick. Of course, we do something here on Publicly Buzzed. We give away a lot of merch. I give away a lot of cool t-shirts, and I just now dropped 2 really sweet t-shirts into the merch store that is for Halloween, and they've already been popping off. Just so you guys can see real quick right here. We got these two skeletons who maybe had a little too much to drink, maybe a little too much to smoke, you know what I'm saying? And then, of course, the Buzz Nation got a nice little lady ghost holding a wine glass. I thought that one would fit perfectly. And sold a bunch of these as well. A little cute one for Publicly Buzzed here. But I have a lot of cool shirts, as you can see here on this site. Hanging and Banging, Meowder Church, the Kitty Priest, Drink the Kool-Aid, Publicly Buzzed. There's loads of cool shirts. The way you can get one of these shirts is if you donate. Any kind of donation, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, through YouTube here, giving out memberships. Once we reach 12 of those names, we fill up this wheel and we spin it. And then whoever wins, and also I've got my other camera. I don't have to do this anymore. I'm back, baby. Whoever wins gets to pick out a t-shirt, and I will send that to them. no matter where on planet Earth you are, okay? We have amazing people in here, and I love you guys, and make sure I'm not forgetting. I feel like I might be forgetting something. I don't think I am, but... and that right there, that thing, and Joanne just showed everyone how you do it. That right there is how you get on the wheel. Gifting out a membership is perfect, and if you do not have your memberships turned on, make sure they are turned on, because you're not going to want to miss that. Kelly Bobelli, and actually that's perfect, because today after this episode, members only, it's on Patreon now, but members only immediately after Murder Church today, about 1 o'clock today is usually when we end this. There's going to be a really cool members only video. It's about 22 minutes long. Me and my buddy went to the Itman Company store deep in the West Virginia mountains. It's a very creepy building that has been abandoned for a very long time, and we explore it. And you can watch that for free if you're a member. So that is dropping today for members only. Let me get Joanne on the list just so I don't forget real quick. I keep a list, and again, once we reach 12, we spin a wheel. And you're number 2. Tiff Knox was the first one on this list from Friday night. So hell yeah. I'm just letting everybody know how we do the damn thing. And again, Joanne, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And Kelly, of course. Oh shit, the wrong one. I hit the wrong one. It's fine. It's a good one either way. We'll hit this one. Welcome to the party, pal. Couch Juror 199. Will Wars begin? I want the new bar shirt. That's a pretty dang shirt. That's a cool shirt just for... You don't have to be a true crime fan. That's just a cool shirt. Couch Juror getting on here with the 199. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Sheila Duffy coming right behind with the 99 getting on there. Thank you guys. Starting this thing out hot here at this morning. That's what I'm talking about. So yeah, we're going to go right now. Miss Dina's in the house also. What's going on? She came through and bought a lot of merch. She's insane. All right, I love you guys. Let's rock and roll. Let's get it going. I'm going to get it rocking and rolling. I'm going to go upstairs and make a little bit of coffee, and we're going to start doing this thing. The first thing we got here, Part 4, Steve Renteria, criminalist, continues his testimony, and it's about 37 minutes right here. And again, if you're not familiar with the Phil Spector murder trial, this is for the death of Lana Clarkson, a former Hollywood movie star, a little bit down on her luck at the end of her life, and she started waitressing at this restaurant. Sadly went home with this man, Phil Spector, who was a very, very established and rich man in Hollywood. He was a producer for the Beatles and numerous other insane acts in the area. And yeah, she ended up dead at his castle, at his mansion, with a gunshot through the mouth and went through the back of her head and killed her. So yeah, let's go, guys. Thank y'all so much. Get the sound going. I'm going to get everybody on the list, and I'm going to keep it on everything. Love you guys.
Parties, jurors, alternates, and the witness are present. You may proceed.
Thank you. Before we get back to the fingernails, Mr. Renteria, I wanted to go back. One of my colleagues asked me to ask you another question about the dilution of luminol. In other words, what dilution will it detect using the chemicals that you actually put together? Your laboratory, was it like 1 in 10,000, 1 in 20,000, 1 in a million? Are you able to tell us that?
I don't have a number to tell you, but I do know based on practical experience that it is more sensitive.
Yes, I will. There we go. And we also have a lot of nice folks that will be generous like that right there. They'll want to put other folks on the wheel in place of them, and that is exactly what I will do for you, Sheila. And Sheila's an old winner, man. Sheila's won a few of these shirts, actually, which is fucking cool. But I think we're trying to get Couch Juror a shirt. Yeah, I got you.
Than a KM reagent.
And is it your testimony? Well, let me ask you this. Are you, other than your training and experience in using luminol, have you ever done any research in luminol, how it works, and published any papers regarding that or anything such as that?
No.
And how about this KM or Kasselmeyer testing that uses the chemical reagent using phenolphthalein? Have you done any research in how that works?
No.
So it's just your education, which you were told like in seminars, and your on-the-job experience that you're giving testimony concerning. Is that correct?
Correct.
You would actually, whether it's luminol or whether it's KM testing, you would, if you had a question about that, you'd actually go to the research and look it up and get more definitive information if you had a question about that subject. Is that correct?
Yes, if I had to answer, how many studies were done, let's say with luminol, and what type of range of dilutions gave a positive result, I would have to go to the references and look that up.
And you said you had some experience in blood spatter, but it doesn't sound like you really are that's not something you regularly do. Is that also true?
Correct.
Okay, so you would defer to other experts in that field. Is that also true?
That's true. Like in this case, which is a reconstruction case, or any other case that involved blood spatters, I would refer to other people in the laboratory to make that reconstruction based on that type of evidence.
Okay, blood spatter, blood drops, things of that nature. Is that correct?
Well, how the spatters and drops came to be on the surface. I can identify a blood drop, you know, in the size of the drop and possibly the angle that the blood drop would have impacted. But coming up with the reconstruction.
And I'm just happy to have my camera back. I hated the other situation. Like, that camera looked so strange to me. Like, this one I can kind of fix the color a little bit. Like, I can, you know, fuck with everything a little bit. Like, I can make it pop.
Scenario of what overall happened, that's what I would defer to other experts.
And just as an example, that's why you take photographs of these drops so that you could look.
Yeah, this is part 4 of Steve Renteria's criminalist testimony, Terran Dusty.
Look at them later, because if you didn't see them yourself, then you wouldn't know what they look like and what their characteristics were. Is that true?
That's very true, yes.
Now, we broke here, and I was starting to ask you some questions about fingernails and looking at fingernails as far as the forensic biology work that you do. And you do that on a regular basis, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And you do that, basically, you're looking at fingernails.
I see the other the message up there where you missed last week. Oh, man.
Scraping sometimes you look at the actual fingernails, and you're trying to not necessarily detect who the fingernails belong to, because we kind of know where they came from. You're looking for foreign material, isn't that true?
Yes.
And there's two types of foreign material that you're interested in. You're looking for maybe foreign tissue, correct?
Correct.
And blood, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And sometimes, because of the sensitivity of this testing, sometimes it can even pick up skin cells. Like, let's say if somebody just brushes up against somebody.
There we go. She found it. Michelle J. just become a Buzzed and Confused member, and she also can see. Also, there's tons of cool members-only videos in there already. Where I've already done a little bit of exploring out there, out and about. I'm doing a little bit of something different here at Publicly Buzzed, but that one today that is dropping immediately after the show is really freaking good, guys. Like, I can't say enough good things about that. But Michelle also getting you on the wheel here for the possibility of winning out a t-shirt your first time in here. How dope would that be? That's happened before as well with folks. So yeah, he got you on here real quick. And then Miss Dina giving out a membership as well. Again, the kindest freaking folks in this community. Factual Lie picking that thing up. Hell yeah. What? What? What are we doing? What are we doing? Not messing around. Yeah. Got you on the list, Miss Dina. Thank you so much. Absolutely unbelievable folks here. And then anytime we get new members, just drop my phone. What the hell? I dropped my phone. It went into another universe. It went behind me, weirdly. Anytime we have new members, we drop those beers in the chat. Maybe a little something there on the end. I don't know if you can tell what that is. Hell yeah. What I'm going to do right now, folks, I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to make a coffee. I'll be right freaking back. And hell yeah. This is unbelievable. You guys rule.
Might collect some skin cells under their fingernail that you might be able to analyze using DNA technology. Isn't that
Right
true?
back.
That's possible, yes.
It doesn't have to be a big gouge or a scratch to do that. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And there was an example that Mr. Jackson used concerning Mr. Dixon's favorite pen.
Look at this dude. Look at this dude. If you are new here, 1 second. If you are new here, look at this fucking dude. Look at Phil Spector. All right, I would encourage anybody that jumps in right now into this trial, in the later stage of it, to go back and watch the beginning episodes. Because there is lady after lady after lady that has been, sadly, in a position where they wanted to go home after hanging out with this guy in his house, in a hotel, and he doesn't want them to leave, and then he pulls out a gun and he'll put it in their fucking face or in their mouth and try to scare them to death. Like, this guy is fucking evil. I'll be right back.
His DNA, we might expect to find that on his pen because he handles it all the time. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And then you saw Mr. Jackson using that pen as an example you might be able to find Mr. Jackson's DNA on that very same pin now that he's handled it. Isn't that true?
That's possible, yes.
And in fact, that's not unlikely, isn't it? That you wouldn't be surprised if you found Mr. Jackson's DNA on that pin right now.
If he just handled it, I would expect
All right,
to
I'll be
see
right back.
more cells from
I'm watching on my phone.
Dixon, because it's his pen. He would handle it a lot longer and more constantly. And if Mr. Jackson just picked it up for that demo that you're describing, there would most likely be more cells from Mr. Dixon than Mr. Jackson, and I may not see DNA from Mr. Jackson.
Okay, but you wouldn't be surprised if you found Mr. Jackson's DNA on that pin because he recently handled it. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the DNA doesn't just come from his hand, in other words, from skin on his hand. It could be that he, maybe had his hand near his mouth and it's actually cells from the mouth or from the eyes. A wealth of different areas could end up on that pin, even though he only touched it with his hands. Isn't that true?
That's correct.
In fact, the mouth and the eyes, they slough off a lot of DNA. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes.
And dander, people's hairs falls off of things. It could end up getting on an item. Isn't that true?
Yes.
Now, when you look at the scrapings under a fingernail, you took some scrapings that were collected by Jamie Lintemood. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And setting aside what we're calling the damaged nail, because that's a different collection process, isn't that right?
Yes.
You were looking for foreign biological material under Lana Clarkson's fingernails. Isn't that correct?
That's right. I examined those scrapings after Dr. Harold had examined them. Again, she was the individual or expert in charge of the reconstruction, so she looked at those items first, did her analysis, and I'm sure she'll talk about that. Then I got those samples from her to sample them for the purposes of DNA.
Okay, I want to talk about the work that you did, and we'll let Dr. Harold deal with whatever she did. You were told by her, though, that she can look under a microscope and she can detect blood just by looking at it, just visually?
Under a microscope,
Under a
yes.
microscope, okay. Is that generally accepted in the scientific community that you can do that?
I imagine it would be if you had training in it, as she has.
Okay. And your community, your scientific community, basically relies on the Kastle-Meyer or other similar tests to detect blood. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And there's a lot of literature on that subject that backs up that scientific method. Isn't that true?
Yes.
Now, with reference to your work on the fingernail scrapings, did you look at the items that you're testing visually, or did you leave that to Dr. Harold?
Again, Dr. Harold examined them first. Once she was done with her analysis, I was given the samples to sample for the purposes of DNA. So I did see them visually, but knowing that Dr. Harold did the initial examination of them, I didn't take a long time examining them, let's say under a microscope. I just took samplings that would move on to DNA.
Okay, so you basically left the visualization part to her, and you went to these other steps that you talked about earlier, steps 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the DNA testing process. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And essentially you had samples from both the left and right hand, actually from every fingernail. Isn't that true?
That's what would be the scrapings. That's correct.
Okay, and basically you took all of the biological material and you put them in a test tube from the left and right hand. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And basically, did you pull them together? Is that what you did?
No. This particular item, the scrapings that the coroner's office used to take samples is, if you've had a manicure before, which I haven't, they use what's called an orange stick, and it's basically a long stick that has a flattened end at one end. And they use that stick to get under the nails, one by one, over a piece of paper. Then they'll take the stick, put it in the paper, fold it up, and then that goes into evidence. So what I examined for the scrapings was that section of the stick that would have come into contact under the nails. I literally cut off that particular end, the user end of that stick, put that into a plastic tube, then started the DNA process.
And your understanding of this process is that this stick is used to basically pull out, try to grind out all the grime under the fingernails, basically.
Not necessarily. What it's trying to do, like you explained earlier, is to try to find any foreign material that might be present other than the victim. So one would not, I would imagine, would want to be digging into the bed of the nail, because then you'll be picking up a lot of the victim's tissue.
And if you did that, it might overwhelm the sample and you wouldn't get the foreign material detected, correct?
That's right. The sole purpose of this is to try to find foreign material that might be present under the nail.
And essentially what happened is one stick is used for one hand, one stick is used for another?
Yes.
Okay, so basically you get a kind of a left-hand sample, you get a right-hand sample, is that correct?
Yes.
And in this case, since there was a broken piece of acrylic, as you've learned, they did a broken nail kit and that was separately done, isn't that true?
Yes.
Okay, and so you actually had 3 samples to work with. You had the broken nail kit sample, correct?
Correct.
Which was cut off, is that true?
Yes.
Okay, and then you had the scrapings that you just testified about, correct?
Yes.
And in your experience, you have tested fingernails over the years a number of times, is that correct?
Yes.
And you've reported out foreign material that biologically is connected with other people many times, isn't that true?
Well, it's that type of evidence, because it's so minute. I think I could remember, maybe I could count on one hand how many cases where I actually got enough foreign material to get a DNA profile from whoever the second person was on the nail. Most of the time, what we find, especially if there's a lot of bleeding, what we find is the victim's DNA profile from their own nails. But the answer is yes, you can get it, but it's not that common.
Do you actually do a lot of casework, or do you do more supervisory work?
I do a lot of casework, not as much as some of the analysts under me, but I do some casework.
In the last couple of years, how many times have you even analyzed fingernail scrapings?
Probably in the last 2 or 3 years, I probably could remember just 3 or 4 cases, including this one,
Okay.
where I attempted to get foreign DNA.
And it's in the scientific literature, there's a lot of talk about doing fingernail scrapings, how to do it, how to best optimize your results. Is that correct?
Yeah, there are a few papers on it in the scientific journals.
And you're familiar with those papers, I take it?
I know of a few of them, yes.
And you've actually been to some scientific conferences where they talk about doing fingernail scrapings and testing for foreign material. Is that correct?
Yes, every once in a while, papers would be presented covering that subject.
And you follow those scientific procedures when you do the type of work you do regarding fingernails, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Now, when you do the fingernail scrapings, do you do anything to try to chemically identify whether or not there's blood in the scrapings that you've talked about?
Well, if I'm doing the case from screening and sampling to the very end, yes. I would most likely sample the area first, then go back and do a KM test to see if there's any blood. In this particular case, as I mentioned before, Dr. Harold did the screening prior to me sampling. So all the screening questions of what she found or didn't find would be better for her to answer than me, since I didn't do them.
Okay, did you get the results of what her screening was? Because typically you do that yourself, and then you would follow up with the biological testing.
If verbal results, and I think what I remember, maybe 2 of the 3 samples, she was able to identify blood microscopically. So I did not go back and do KMs on those items.
Did she identify blood from the broken nail? Is that where she identified it from?
Again, you would have to ask her.
Okay. In any event, you were looking for fingernail results regarding Lana Clarkson's left and right hand, is that correct?
The scrapings from the left and right hand, yes.
And just like with any type of testing, this particular type of testing that you use, this STR, PCR-based testing, can detect mixtures of biological sources, is that correct?
Yes.
And when you do a DNA test, let's say you're doing a fingernail scraping test and you're putting it in the test tube, just like you did in this particular case, and you get a profile or a mixture of 2 people's profile, or even 3, you don't know what type of biological material created that profile. Is that correct?
We wouldn't know with absolute certainty. If there was blood identified, one could assume it could be from the blood. If a microscopic exam was done and if skin or a skin tag or a piece of skin was noted at the end of the nail, then one could assume that possibly the DNA was from the skin. But to say absolutely, the answer is no.
You don't know whether it's could come from skin and some blood that you can't even see, or a little bit of saliva, skin, and blood. It could be a combination of any one or all three.
Correct.
Could be just saliva, theoretically, correct?
Correct.
And that came off the mouth, or some cells that came out of the eyes when somebody rubbed their eyes.
That's correct.
Or a little bit of dandruff, even if you find it on a fingernail.
Yes.
And so there's no way scientifically you can make any statement that something came from skin versus dandruff or anything such as that. Is that correct?
Well, it all depends what you see. One of my examples, if you looked microscopically and you saw a piece of skin and you were qualified to identify it as skin, and that gave you a profile, then I think one could have the opinion that that DNA came from that piece of skin.
And if there's a mixture, then where would the other DNA come from?
Well, the other part of it, you may not be able to tell, and it could be the different various areas that you have described.
Okay, so when there's a mixture, then you really don't know where the item, you know that some DNA came from that potential skin, but you're not sure where the other DNA came from. Is that true?
That's true.
Now, one of the things that you use to sort of help you out is you do this testing type work, presumptive testing. Is that correct?
Yes, or any other screening test that would help you identify if blood was present.
And if something was like a positive for KM, then you say, well, there might be blood present there. That's the presumptive test, correct?
Yeah, there could be some blood there, or somebody could identify it microscopically. One would say there could be some blood component in that mixture.
And the reason that you look at fingernails is because sometimes you can get foreign profiles there and you can maybe verify that a struggle occurred between two people, or you can prove that two people had contact in a particular way. Isn't that true?
That's right. I would say prove that they had contact. I'm not sure if it would prove, definitely that there was a struggle, but at least some kind of contact.
Physical contact, because actually, theoretically, if we're, like you talked about some of the glassware that you tested, it had mixtures and so forth. It could be two people sharing a glass and different DNA gets on that glass. Isn't that true?
Well, I think what you're trying to describe, if I came to you and shook your hand and maybe dragged my nails from the back of your hand by accident, I could pick up some of your skin cells under my nail. I wouldn't do it intentionally. There was no struggle, but it could happen.
But when let's say there was some glassware that you tested, some brandy snifters, and you saw a mixture of Ms. Clarkson's DNA profile, Mr. Spector's DNA profile, is that what you found?
Yes, I found mixed profiles on those items.
Okay. Does that mean they both drank from the glass, or they both handled the glass, or do you know?
I don't know.
Okay, could be
all I know is both their DNA profiles were consistent in those mixtures.
Okay. So with reference to Ms. Clarkson's fingernail scrapings, did you subject them to this DNA copying process, this PCR process?
Yes.
And there's a standard number of terms or cycles that you go through with all samples. Isn't that true? A range?
Yes.
Okay, and you did the same thing with those samples as you did with the others. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in order to determine whether there's DNA present, because you made some statements in your direct exam that sometimes you don't take the process any further, you go through an evaluation stage, and that's a quantification stage. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's where you put a little bit of the sample in through a quantification stage where you actually kind of measure the DNA in a molecular way. Is that true?
Yes, that's a good description.
And DNA can be measured, and it can be measured and quantified in the process that you use forensically. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the unit of measurement that's typically used is a nanogram unit of measurement. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And tell the jurors what a nanogram is. What is that type of unit of measurement?
A nanogram is a description of how much DNA by weight is present. And if I get my numbers right, I know it'll be close to the right number, but a nanogram is a billionth of a gram. So if you took something that weighed 1 gram and cut it up in 1 billion pieces, one of those pieces would be 1 nanogram.
Okay, so Mr. Jackson was showing you this little lead pencil and so forth. That's much bigger than a billionth of a gram, isn't that true? Well, let me ask you this question. A billionth of a gram, you can actually test and get a result on 1 nanogram, isn't that true?
Yes, if the DNA is in good condition, there's no interferences that would cause the reaction not to, the amplification reaction not to give the proper cycling or duplications each time it cycles through, 1 nanogram should give you DNA results.
And when you go through this process and you measure the DNA, you actually record how much you recover from various samples. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And for example, in the fingernail example, you recovered, you have that documented in your notes that you have to keep your certification. Isn't that true?
Yes, it would be in the case file.
Okay. And
Got coffee.
could you tell us what kind of nanogram recovery you got from the fingernails before you got the profile that you reported in your casework?
I would have to look in that particular case file.
Okay. Will that take you a long time, or?
It may. Let me see if I can find it quickly.
Anybody new in here that is unaware, we do have a live shot of Phil right there. A live shot of Phil Spector at all times available. This is exclusively through Publicly Buzzed, through Space and Time. This trial is, of course, from 2007. But that right there, the ghoul Phil Spector lives. Well, he's dead. He lives in the stream. Ghoul fuckface.
If it's going to take you a while, I'll move on. We'll talk about it.
This man died. When Phil Spector died, he was worth, in prison, he was worth $50 million.
Why don't you go ahead and move on, and then he can take a look for it.
Okay.
Do you have more than another 15 or 20 minutes of cross?
I do.
Okay, then he can look for it overnight.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Renteria, let's get to the reporting of your results. When you have a result, a profile that you develop from an evidence sample, you make a report concerning that. Is that true?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
When you have a result from a test that you do of an evidence sample, like fingernails or a ginger ale bottle or anything like that, you document and summarize your result in a report, do you not?
Yes.
And you actually describe what your result is, and then you put a table of what the genetic markers that you find
Yo, young black economist hanging out this morning. Good morning.
are applicable to that particular sample. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And then you, in that table, you have the reference samples in one part of the table, and you can actually compare the evidence samples to the reference samples. Isn't that correct?
Yes, we make those tables so lawyers can also make a visual comparison.
And sometimes they're enlarged for the purposes of the jury to see. Isn't that true?
That's true.
Okay. In this particular case, let's start with the left-hand fingernail scrapings. Did you analyze those and come up with some type of a result?
Yes, I did.
And did you publish that in your report?
If I may refer to my report.
Yes.
Okay, you were mentioning the left hand
Yeah, let's go
fingernail
with the left
scrapings.
hand.
Okay.
And we'll go to the right, so keep it right there.
The left hand fingernail scrapings was consistent with a single source of DNA, and that DNA profile matches the DNA profile from Lana Clarkson.
Okay, now when you say it matches, meaning, well, let me ask you this question. Essentially, everybody that has a DNA profile can have two different types of DNA from at each location. Is that correct?
Two types at each DNA marker is a possibility.
Okay.
Two different types.
Two different types. They could have two of the same type. Is that correct?
That's right, and it would look just like one number. You would have one number. An example for one DNA marker we have, you could have a 10 and a 13 type. I could have a 9 and a 14 type. Mr. Jackson could have just one type, an 8.
And that he actually has 2, but they're both 8. Isn't that true?
That's correct.
And basically, one of the laws of genetics are that you get one type from your parent, one from your father, one from your mother. Is that true?
That's right. One type each from each parent, mother and father.
And if you see a third type, then you know that there has to be a mixture in that particular sample, because it's impossible for you to give more than 2 types.
Well, there are genetic situations. In general, that is a correct statement, but there are genetic situations where some individuals can have a third type that was either inherited by one of their parents, and you would actually see 3 different types, usually at only one marker though. And then there's also situations where mutations can occur or changes in the DNA as you're developing from an embryo to a fetus, and sometimes that can result in having 3 types at one marker. And again, usually you only see it at one marker. We actually have a couple individuals at the lab that exhibit that particular phenomenon, me being one of them.
And that's very rare, is that correct?
I wouldn't say very rare. I would say less than 1%, but it does happen, and we have 3 individuals at our lab that have it.
Watching you.
You didn't, when you did the reference sample for Lana Clarkson, you didn't see her have that phenomenon, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So if we saw a third marker, it's called an allele, is that true?
We like to call it a type for the jury. I think it's a little more easier to understand. But yeah, scientifically, it's called an allele.
Okay. One allele from mom, one allele from dad. You can inherit usually a maximum of 2. Is that correct? At any one location?
That's right. One type from mother, one type from father.
Okay, so when you did the left-hand fingernail scrapings and you carried it through this process, you were looking for any type or allele, using both of those terms interchangeably, that was inconsistent with Lana Clarkson, essentially, because that would be foreign to her. Is that correct?
Well, we're looking at the profile, and we would be able to determine if there was a type present in that sample that could not have originated from Lana Clarkson.
Okay, and you talked a lot about looking at minor and major amounts of DNA, and your testing that you use now, you're able to do that because the sensitivity of the testing and the ability to look at small amounts of DNA has greatly increased over the last couple of years. Isn't that true?
That's true. It really depends on the sample. If you have a lot of genetic material to test, there are occasions, and it's not 100%, where you can tell if there's a major or minor donor. Sometimes, and I think I described in one of these stains, you can't tell because there's close to an equal part.
Oh shit. She heard me. She saw my message there in chat. Miss Dina coming through here. Puff past that collection basket. Hell yeah. $5 holler also. Thank you so much, Miss Dina. And getting on that thing. Let me get you on here real quick. Miss Dina's been crazy, man. She was going through, man, buying some of that new merch up. Fucking crazy. Like, I want the new white shirt. I still need to get the Kitty Priest shirt. I need to just sit down one day and like get these shirts. Because I always say that and then I just don't buy them. 4, 5, 6, 7. I think we're, 5 away from a spin here this morning? Hell yeah. Thank you, Miss Dina. Appreciate it.
50-50, and you really...
I'm going to get the Kitty Priest sweater, though. I'm going to get that one, and it's starting to get colder now, so it's going to be perfect. Rock that on here.
Can't tell who donated more DNA or less DNA. That happens a lot also.
Okay, and you analyzed and did explain something that's kind of like a Xerox kind of process where you're copying the DNA?
Yes.
And sometimes DNA that's basically in better shape copies better than DNA that's not in good shape. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's very good, yes.
Okay, so you might have more DNA, but it copies less than less DNA that copies better. Isn't that true?
In the scenario you're setting up, if you had more DNA but it was in very poor shape, you're right. It would copy less. And if you had a smaller amount of DNA in your mixed sample, but it was in very good shape, there's a chance that that can amplify more than the bad DNA.
And it would just look like there's more, but in fact, you really can't tell one way or the other. Isn't that true?
Well, if it looks like there's more, sometimes you could tell, and that's when we declare a major minor. But again, there are occasions where you can't tell.
Now, Mr. Jackson talked to you a little bit about timing of DNA. In other words, asking you to whether you can say how old DNA is or how new DNA is or when it was put somewhere. If you tested that countertop that's right in front of you and you got a DNA profile, would you be able to say, well, this was there, let's say, a day ago, a week ago, or 10 minutes ago?
Would not be able to say.
Okay, so would you be able to tell if it was a mixture, which DNA got there first?
No.
So with reference to Lana Clarkson's left, well, let me ask you this question. You look at a number of different locations on the DNA molecule to try to determine whether foreign DNA is there or whether a mixture is present. Is that correct?
Yes, we look at a number of markers to determine that.
Like you even look at the sex marker, is that correct, the amylogenin?
Yes.
And so you look at 13 different markers.
Like you even look at the sex marker, is that correct? And then you said
The amylogenin? Did I pronounce that right?
Amylogenin.
Amylogenin.
Do you need the spelling, Cindy?
can I get an answer?
Huh?
I need an answer to that question.
I don't,
I don't have an answer to his question. Like you even look at the sex marker, is that correct? The amylogenin?
Amylogenin?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
all right.
In addition to the sex marker that we just talked about, how many different locations do you look at to determine whether a match occurs or doesn't occur with a particular known person?
Well, back in 2003, the technology we used produced 13 different DNA markers plus amylogenin.
So 14 total, and each one of them could potentially show that a mixture was present. Is that true?
Yeah, I wasn't finished with my,
I'm sorry.
my previous answer. If you have enough DNA back in 2003 to get those 13 DNA markers, you would have to split your sample up and do 2 separate amplifications to get those 13. Now, there are occasions, especially with smaller stains, that you don't have enough DNA to split the sample to do 2 tests, so you only do 1 test. And if there was only enough to do 1 test, you would only be attempting 9 DNA markers. The second kit would actually amplify 6 DNA markers. 2 of those markers would be exactly the same as the 2 in the first kit, and that's how you would get a total of 13.
Okay.
So depending on how much DNA you had, it would either be 13 DNA markers or 9, and that's assuming you get results for all the markers.
And with the left-hand fingernail scrapings, how many different markers did you look at? If you could quickly look at your table of results.
Yes. For that particular sample, I was only able to amplify enough for the 1 test, so I attempted 9 DNA markers.
Okay. And in any of those 9 markers that you looked at,
That's
did
a-
you see a mixture of
That's a great band name, Morning Couch.
DNA between more than one person?
No, the profile was consistent with coming from a single source.
At each location, is that correct?
Well, we look at each location separately, but when we make interpretations and try to determine what is this profile telling us, we take the entire profile into account, not just one at a time. So given the entire profile, it's consistent with coming from a single source.
In one of the questions that you were asked by Mr. Jackson, you indicated that there was a Y marker that was found in a sample, let's say on the rag that you tested, and that indicated that would be foreign to Lana Clarkson because she could never have a Y marker. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so you knew that just by that one Y marker showing up in extremely low quantities, that there had to be a mixture of DNA on that particular sample. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the only place you saw where a mixture occurred. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And so even though you didn't see it in every location, you saw it in one location, which told you scientifically there had to be somebody that was a male that donated some DNA to that sample. Is that correct?
That's right, and that's because it is the amylogenin marker or sex identifying. The other markers tell us nothing about sex. So even if we saw one allele or type at one DNA marker, I wouldn't be able to say it was from a male or from a female because it doesn't detect that.
But you would be able to say whether or not it came from a particular individual or could have come from a particular individual. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So, for example, on the bullets that were taken from the gun, you swabbed all of the bullets. Is that correct?
No, as I
Shit, Queen Olive, who also just got sent out a shirt. She passed a winner. Gift out a membership, and that's amazing, Queen Olive. Who gets that thing? Kai. Hell yeah, that's what I'm talking about. What? I didn't mean to hit that one, but thank you so much. And this is what I want to play earlier when I was off here when a troll was lurking around here. Huh? Huh? Welcome the hell in here, Kai. Let me hit you with one of these right here real quick. Thank you very much, Queen Olive. On that thing.
described earlier, I only swabbed, when you say all of the bullet,
All of
I'm
the
assuming
tips of
you
the
mean
bullets.
the entire bullet. I only
No.
swabbed the top.
The tips of each
Right.
one, though.
The exposed bullet, all 5 of them
Thank you so
were
much.
put together into one sample.
Okay, but you swabbed all of them. In other words, you just didn't pick out one versus the other. You swabbed the tips of each one,
That's right, all 5 live cartridges.
including the cartridge that was in the void that you couldn't, that wasn't exposed. Isn't that, you swabbed that one?
Yes, it only holds 6 bullets.
Okay.
One of them was fired.
So that you only had 5 to work
Right,
with.
so there was no exposed bullet. That was just an empty case because it was fired.
You don't hear anything? The sound effects aren't working? Oh, what the hell? Oh my God. They were working. Sorry. Hold on. I had them working on this one.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Sorry about that. How about this one? This is what I want to say. Listen to the troll. Hold on.
Respect my house.
I got to set it up on the other one. Sorry about that.
Welcome
The hell in here, Kai.
Baby, I got your money, don't you worry.
It's awkward.
The rounds were removed by, I believe it was Detective Cass, if I remember right. When I received them, and I'm getting to the answer, but
Okay.
when I received them, there were 5 live rounds plus the expendable cartridge in a envelope. So I don't know which bullet was in which position. I know the expended cartridge was in position number 1 or on the top, but I don't know which one of them was in the bottom one as you described.
Well, there was one in the bottom one that was in what's called the void position. Isn't that true?
Well, they would have to be, because there was only 5 more bullets that could fit in that chamber.
You didn't know which one it was, but you swabbed all of the live rounds, including the one that would have been in the void. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You'd put all of the DNA in a test tube eventually. Isn't that correct?
Yes,
Yeah, actually, you used 2 swabs, then you combine the swabs,
correct.
okay, including the DNA from the bullet in the void. Is that correct?
Whichever one it was, yes.
Whichever one it was.
Yes.
And you can't say whether you can't say all of that DNA came from blood or saliva or touching or anything such as that. You can't say that, can you?
Well, I believe Dr. Harold identified blood on several of those exposed bullet portions of those cartridges.
She didn't identify any blood on the void bullet. Is that true?
I don't know.
Okay.
You'd have to ask Dr. Harold.
Okay. But you would assume that there would be no blood on the void bullet. Isn't that correct?
Last foundation to say that.
Are you able to answer that? Do you think you are able to offer an opinion based on your training?
Can you ask that again? I'm sorry.
The void wouldn't be exposed to the outside world, so to speak, as far as blood being tossed around. Isn't that true?
Objection, once again, this witness lacks the foundation.
Let's find out. I want to ask him if he is able to, are you able to answer that question?
Well, Your Honor, I'm not a firearms expert, and that might be a better question for a firearms expert to see how much room is in what you're calling the void bullet. I don't know if you had blood going towards that gun, if there'd be enough room for some blood to get into whatever crevices are there.
Based on that answer, then the objection would be sustained as to going further with that because he can't give necessarily a correct answer.
You did some presumptive blood testing on the swabs that were used to swab these tips of these bullets. Is that
Best
correct?
judge right here.
If I may refer to my notes?
Please
Yes.
do.
Judge Dowhard
And that'll be our last question and answer for the day.
is awesome.
Not
Thanks
even one
everyone
more
for being
now?
here.
Oh, if you want one more, you
Okay,
can have
thank
one
you.
more.
Yeah. Cord is
Yes,
getting
at this particular sample, the 5 exposed bullet portions of those cartridges were sampled as described earlier. After those were sampled with the swabs, I went back with a clean swab with a little bit of water and touched each bullet again. I then tested that swab with the KM reagent, and I got a weak positive,
Okay.
which would be indicative of blood being present on one or several of those live rounds.
And all of the DNA either came back to Lana Clarkson or another person who was genetically inconsistent with Philip Spector.
No, all of the DNA, with the exception where she was major, came back to Lana Clarkson only. And there was only one marker that had one type within it that was foreign to Lana Clarkson and Phil Spector, the one type.
The one type, which means that it had to be a mixture, is that true?
Yes,
And it had to be a mixture of Lana Clarkson and somebody other than Philip Spector.
correct.
And with
All right.
that, we'll take our break.
Thank you.
All right, sit your ass down, Plord, right now. Sit your
If you
ass
keep in
down.
mind Mr. Plord's admonition, as well as mine.
Dude, I'm telling you, it breaks into an absolute comedy club in here.
And we will be in recess
least
until
one-
9:30
once a
tomorrow
video.
morning. Thank you. The witness will
Part
return.
5, Renteria, Criminalist. An hour 10 to go here. Everyone in here, thank y'all so much. Let's see where we're at on this wheel just real quick. And I do, again, appreciate everyone for coming through on this fine morning. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We are 4 names away from filling up a wheel here this morning. And yeah, giving out a t-shirt. Again, have some new Halloween merch in there, rocking and rolling. And then again, immediately after this is what I will keep wanting to really plug. Immediately after this here today, and I'm going to do another in pitch, and I'll probably even show you guys literally me making it members only, and it will be available as soon as I hit into the stream. Okay, I'm going to be dropping something. It's been on Patreon for, since I think last Thursday, something like that. Patreon will get stuff just a slight bit earlier, but the members here are about to get an awesome ass video of me and my buddy John from Appalachia. That's another YouTuber. He has his own channel. He's actually a professional YouTuber. That's what he does for a living. And he travels around and does all kinds of cool stuff. And I was lucky enough to get to go with him to deep into the West Virginia mountains, a couple hours away from currently in West Virginia. And we went to the Itman Company store, which is an old mining company store where the miners who would live basically behind this place, and this is where they would get paid. This is where they got to buy all their goods. The old saying was you could buy anything here except for a car. You know why that was? So you couldn't fucking escape. All right, we lived in some real old dark times back in the day. And still do, let's just be honest. But this is going to be wild. It's an abandoned building. It's creepy. It's crazy. I almost get stung by bees. It's dropping immediately after this. So if you're not membered up, now would be a good time to do such a thing. Sinead coming through here. Sinead is special around these parts because her first ever murder church, which has been a couple of weeks now, maybe even a month. It's been a while. Not only it's been that long, but her first ever morning on Murder Church, she won back-to-back wheels, which is insane. And right now, throwing out a $5 holler, Sinead. I really appreciate that. Getting on the wheel once again, and that's unbelievable. Thank you so much. Bam, bam, 3 away this morning. Thank y'all so much. We're gonna keep rocking and rolling again. We got an hour and 10 going into part 5 with Steve Renteria, Criminalist, and let's keep going here. We usually go to about 12:31, filling it out. Still early in the morning church here.
Well, let me tell you something, brother.
All right. You remain under oath, and you may proceed, Mr. Plord.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Renteria.
Good morning.
Just to pick up on one of the points that I talked about yesterday regarding the fingernails, we were talking about, the quantity of DNA and part of your analysis is that you quantify the DNA
Really good.
before you do your testing. That's one of the steps that you go through. Is that correct?
Yes.
And we were talking about the term nanogram, which you said is 1/1000th of 1 gram. Is that correct?
Correct.
And basically, if we were to visualize what 1/1000th of a gram would be, we really couldn't see it, could we?
You couldn't see it. That's correct.
Okay, if it, a
Oh,
billion.
one other thing. I'm sorry. I did want to shout out the people sharing. I always like to do that as well. Love to give the love around these parts. A lot of fucking cool people, man. The Buzz Nation growing all the time, and I can't do it without the folks out here sharing and helping out all the time. Seeking Justice, thank you so much for that share. Last night. Are you kidding me? Last night. Sinead with a share as well on the X Machine. Shelly, Pokemon there in the chat with a share. Brooklyn, modding up always there in the chat. Phil, Tao Toys, my dude, coming through with a share. There's another share that's even random. Bad Mom Bree, thank you so much. And that's what'll happen, right? Somebody randomly saw that and also helping out. Sheila Duffy coming through this morning with a share. Taryn Dusty coming through this morning with a share. What the fuck, dude? Dizzy coming through with a share. You guys are amazing.
Of a gram of
Spread the word,
that
baby.
would
Good
be
word.
subject to
Gospel,
getting a
if you
DNA
will.
test. One billionth of a gram could be on like a little piece of lint that's floating in the air. In other words, you could get that much DNA on that little piece of lint that could be floating in the air. Is that true?
Well, if it was, let's say, a skin flake,
her up, baby.
a good
Kelly,
part of the
thank
skin
you.
that had a lot of cells in it, that would be a possibility.
Okay, what I'm saying is that it's light enough that it could be transmitted by just a little particle floating in the air. Like
And I do want to say this, maybe in case, we always have new folks, just in case there's any kind of confusion, there is no limit to how many people can be on a will. So right there, Joanne just doubled her chances. Couchster also has doubled their chances. Mestina doubled their chances. The possibility of getting that victory. So there is no
dust
limit.
that you see when the sunlight
Joanne,
comes
thank
in,
you.
that type of stuff.
Well, I have another analogy, if you'd like for me to explain what 1 nanogram is.
Okay.
A nickel, everybody knows the size of a nickel, weighs approximately 5 grams. That's just the weight of it. So if you took a nickel, divided up into 5 pieces, took one of those 5 pieces and somehow were able to chop that up into 1 billion pieces, one piece would be a nanogram, or 1 billionth of a gram. And obviously it'd be so small you wouldn't be able to see it, but that would be enough DNA if the DNA was in good condition for us to get a DNA profile.
Okay, so we were talking about this, basically something that potentially is invisible that you could actually analyze and tell who that DNA might come from. In other words, what person it may come from. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and for example, in the fingernail scrapings, I asked you to tell us what your lab records show as to how much DNA was there. And did you get from Lana Clarkson's fingernail scrapings, left hand, did you get over 1 nanogram?
Yeah, just over 1 nanogram, enough to do one of the PCR tests that we spoke about yesterday.
9 locations, 9 genetic markers that you talked about yesterday, is that correct?
That's correct.
And the result of that test was that absolutely none of that DNA that you were able to test came back to Philip Spector, is that correct?
That's correct.
Basically, there was no foreign DNA at all from any other person. The only DNA was from Lana Clarkson only, is that true?
That's true, sir.
And when it went to the right hand, did you get a result on that particular sample?
No, that particular sample gave me no detectable amounts of human DNA. Therefore, the test stopped at that point.
Okay, so basically no DNA from Philip
Oh, look who
Spector and
changed
none
his
from...
attire. We got a purple shirt and a maroon tie. Gray jacket combo with the maroon. I just turned into Shannon. Shannon just the pocket handkerchief hanging out there. Wow. Look at his eyes, dude. Like, he's always just fixated on it. And he doesn't blink.
From Lana
Doesn't
Clarkson or
blink.
anybody else, is that correct?
Give me a
Yes.
blink.
Okay, so that was
Boom.
entirely
Boom.
negative, is
I
that
think that was his blink. It was like a slight, like it barely, it was almost like it glazed
Correct.
over.
That's right. No human DNA.
He's an
detected.
alien.
Now, we ended yesterday, we were talking a little bit about the cartridge casings, the live cartridge casings that you analyzed.
that is the first will right there,
I wanted to
Couchster.
mark
Thank you.
next in order, without having put
I'll
on the
start
board,
working on
a
that.
table of results that I retyped from your analysis, and ask you to take a look at this, and I want to ask you some questions about it.
Quintuple J.
Hell yeah. Something.
Showing you this exhibit, Mr. Renteria. Do you have your copy? I gave you a copy. I'm not sure if I gave you this one, but I think you do have it. Okay. Very
Same
good.
blink. Telling you.
You see that 4J exhibit?
5J.
See 5J exhibit?
Is it supposed to be on the screen?
No, it's not.
Okay.
I got to make sure it's accurate before I put it on the screen. So I wanted you to tell us whether that correctly sets forth your DNA typing results.
Yes, 5J, you gave me a copy yesterday, I believe, at the lunch hour, and it looks to be the original, where a copy I received at lunchtime.
Okay, and if we could have this table, 1C swabbings from 5 live rounds, if we could have that put on the board, and this is 5J. And essentially...
It's actually not 5J, maybe it's misleading. That would make it a people's exhibit. It's quintuple J.
Quintuple J. Okay, JJ. It's on the board now, Mr. Renteria, and on the top 2 rows, if we could isolate that for a minute and take a look at that, does that correctly set forth the reference samples for Lana Clarkson and Philip Spector that you reported in your testing in this case?
Well, after reviewing the copy you gave me yesterday, I did notice you did make an error in the identification of the item number for Lana Clarkson's blood. Instead of 101, that should be 100.
Okay, so basically her reference sample is 100 instead of 100.
That's right, and Phil Spector's identification number would be 101.
Okay, but as far as the typing, you talked about 2 types, one coming from mom, one coming from dad, and this would be an example of that as far as the known or the reference samples of each Lana Clarkson and Philip Spector at various DNA locations, correct?
That's correct.
So for example, let's just go through this so that the jury can kind of understand what we're doing. We'll go through this first column here and ask that be highlighted, and it has a number up there, D3S1358. And basically what that refers to is the location of the genetic marker on a particular chromosome. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
So D3 would be the 3rd chromosome at position S1358. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so basically at this particular location, Miss Clarkson inherited a 15 and a 16, one from each parent. Is that true?
Yes.
And Mr. Spector, a 15 and an 18. He happened to be the same at one marker, but different at another. Is that true?
Yeah, the same at one type, but a different type at the other pair.
Okay, and then the 4th one down is the AMEL, and that's the sex marker that...
Oh shit, that's awesome, Michelle. And new in here and just got membered up as well. I can't figure out how to gift a membership, and I work in tech. I've seen this debate in the chat many times. But here's to someone gifting for me, and I think it's different if you're on a phone per Android, per iPhone. I don't know. Maybe Google, if anyone's out there that's having any kind of trouble, but holy shit. Anyways, thank you so much. $9.99. That's a super chat from Michelle J. Holy shit. Unbelievable. And Michelle, I just put your name on the wheel we're about to spin, and you're going to be starting out the new wheel as well, Michelle. Thank you so much for that. That's unbelievable. Sweet. Really appreciate that. Getting your name on here so I don't forget. I have to do it right then and there, or it's going to be a cluster. Thank you.
Determines X and XY. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the sex identifying marker called amylogenin, and here it's just abbreviated AMEL.
Okay, and then there are other markers, and there's a number of markers that can be tested, but each one are basically separate as far as your comparison that you do. In other words, you look at them all, but each one can stand or fall on their own. Is that true?
Yes.
And you gave an analogy yesterday about ABO typing, and that's basically a person's blood type, whether they're blood type A, blood type B, blood type O, or AB. That's what you're referring to. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and just as an example, a person can have a blood type of, let's say, blood type A, and if you test blood and it's a blood type B, that person would be excluded because at that particular marker, it would be impossible for that person to contribute that blood type B sample, correct?
Correct.
So even if they match it 5 other locations, if they have a different blood type, then you exclude them for all purposes. Is that true?
That's right. If there's no other reason why a type either is not seen, because let's say the sample was in poor condition or not a lot of DNA we had to work with at the beginning, that absolutely would be true. If the types are different and there's no reason for them to be different, we would exclude that person as a donor.
Okay, even if they matched at several other locations, just by coincidence, if they don't match at one, then they're excluded for all purposes, assuming it meets the criteria that you just explained.
That's correct.
Okay, now on this chart, quadruple J, we've got a picture of the 5 live rounds that you did the tips, that you swabbed the tips on, is that correct?
Yes.
And then we've got a picture here that's been previously marked in evidence that shows the weapon at the scene, and it shows, it's hard to see on this particular picture, but it shows 1 fired round and the rest of the rounds that are in the gun at the time, that it was fully loaded at the time that this event occurred. Is that...
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And when you were at the scene, Mr. Renteria, did you see the gun under Atlanta Clarkson's leg, or had it been removed by the time that you got there?
I recall it being in the position that the previous photos that we looked at yesterday, which was under her legs, when I got there.
Okay, and then at some point in time, Detective Katz picked it up. This photograph, along with some others, were taken, and then thereafter the body was processed and things moved along, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I'd like to have a switch to People's number 99 put on
Just
the...
imagine, creep. I mean, this dude had a wife and kids in his life. For fuck's sake, just imagine getting up to have to get, I don't know, glass of milk, glass of water, midnight, 1 in the morning, groggy, sleepy. Got to get up for just a moment. I'm going to go in there. Could get around the corner and you see this dude. There's still. Well, God, I think I'd have a heart attack as a child. 8-year-old heart. This 8-year-old had a heart attack. How could this happen? They look at the father. Oh, God in heaven. What are we doing here? Jesus.
The board, please. Oh, we had it. There we go. Now, this is a picture that exhibit number 99, People's number 99, that shows a gun that's the same type of weapon that's involved in this case that was found at the scene, the death scene. And it shows basically a front view, and you see that being the barrel, and then you see these little, they look like chambers that are behind the barrel. Do you know what that's called, that device that is holding those bullets?
I'm not a firearms expert, but I believe that's called the cylinder.
Okay, a cylinder, and that's where you put the bullets in.
Correct.
A gun, is that correct?
That's correct.
And essentially, the testing that you were doing was to try to identify people that, or any DNA that was on the bullets. On the bullets.
Anybody that doesn't know a lot about Phil Spector, if you start Googling and Wikipediaing this guy, you're going to have your mind fucking blown, all right? Horrible piece of shit. Like...
The test that you were doing, is that correct?
No.
Okay, you were
Good
testing
friends with John
DNA from the
Lennon.
tips of the bullets all around those bullets, is that correct?
The only person that seemed to
the
like
purpose
this
of the
fucking
test
guy
was
was
to
John Lennon.
see if there was any biological material, be blood, saliva, any type of tissue that would be very rich in
Let me
cells
see.
that could have backspattered, is a term we use, come back from the body and hit that surface. So the purpose of our exam was to see if there was any backspatter material on the exposed portion of the bullet, which would have been exposed if the live rounds were in the position in the cylinder.
Okay, now, there's a bullet that's behind this portion of the gun, another bullet called the void position, is that correct?
Yeah, I think we talked about that yesterday.
And the
yes.
top one would be the expended bullet. That would be a used bullet, so to speak. Is that correct?
A fired cartridge, yes.
Okay. And that void bullet, you swabbed that. Is that correct?
Yeah, again, as I explained yesterday, I swabbed all 5. I don't know which of the 5 was, using your term, the void bullet.
Okay, but that was included in the DNA collection and in the DNA testing that you did regarding the bullets. Is that true?
That's true.
Now, when you did your testing of the bullets, did you quantify, like you did with the fingernail, the amount of DNA that you recovered when you collected all the DNA and put it into the tubes that you just described when you testified yesterday?
Yes.
And did you get over 18 nanograms of DNA when you collected all of them?
Yes.
And essentially, you could do a test with approximately 1, but you had you could get, actually, you had more than that. Is that true?
Yeah, our target amount of DNA in 2003 for the types of kits that we used, we wanted as a goal to get around 1.5 nanograms. per sample. That's, if we had that much, we would amplify that much. But we definitely would be able to get results, if not all results, most, for just 1 nanogram of DNA. So this gave a total of around 18 nanograms, as you have said. So I would be able to do multiple tests if I needed to on that sample.
If we could have quadruple J back on the board, please.
Quintuple.
Quintuple. These are the this.
And I'm going to try to get a couple more Halloween pieces in there also if I get a minute to do a little bit more looking at some designs and stuff. Yeah, Halloween's coming up. Halloween's my favorite time of the year, so yeah, look for some cool stuff and some special things happening. Maybe even another all-night movie marathon, probably.
On the right side of this exhibit are the 5 bullets that you swabbed. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. And
when
when you and you put all the DNA in your reaction and went through the copying step and the typing step. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. Well, did you put enough in to get a result? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, if we could get the chart back and basically go to this particular genetic marker here. This location, and this would be chromosome 18, position S51. That would be the location of this genetic marker on the human chromosome. Is that true?
Position 51, the S actually means it's a single site DNA marker. It only occurs on one place on all the chromosomes. That's what the S means, single. So it would be site 51 on chromosome number 18.
In other words, it's just like a book. You can go to a chapter and then go to a page and then go to a sentence and you can find a particular word. That would be one way to explain what a genetic marker looks like.
That would be one way, yes.
Okay, and so at this particular location, we have Ms. Clarkson is a 1516. That's her type, correct?
Correct.
And that's called the genotype. In other words, the combination of the two. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then we have an 11 and a 15, and that would be Philip Spector from his reference sample. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And again, the same thing is true with reference to all genetic markers, is that you inherit one from your mother, one from your father. Is that true?
Yes.
And that if there is more than two genetic markers in a sample, it tells you that the evidence sample has to be, by definition, a mixture of more than one person's DNA. Is that correct?
Well, again, I think I explained this yesterday. In most cases, that is correct. However, there are some individuals that can have a third type at usually one particular DNA marker. But when we're looking at the entire profile, we're also looking at the reference samples of the individuals who may have donated the sample. And if that would be true, we would, most of the time, and not all the time, expect to see it in the same type of body fluid in the reference sample as the evidence.
For example, if you look at this particular result, and this is from the bullets from the gun, it has a 15 and 16, and that's the majority of the sample. Is that true?
Yes.
And then there's a 17 there that doesn't match up with Mr. Spector, and it doesn't match up with Lana Clarkson. Is that true?
That's correct.
And that would be foreign to both of them, because if Lana Clarkson had some abnormality and had that marker, you'd see it in her reference sample, as well as other samples that were consistent with her. Is that true?
That's what I would expect, yes.
Okay, so you can exclude that unusual possibility from this particular analysis. Is that true, Mr.
Yes,
Renteria?
that's correct.
Okay, so by definition then, that the DNA on the bullets had to be a mixture. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it would be a mixture of somebody else other than Philip Spector and Lana Clarkson. Is that true?
That's true.
And essentially, the test that, and you talked about mixtures at length yesterday, it has the capability of showing two people's DNA on a particular item. There's nothing inconsistent with this type of testing that would show that. Is that true?
That's right. It's consistent, like I said yesterday, with two donors, Lana Clarkson being the major donor. Phil Spector is excluded as giving that 17, so it had to come from somebody else. Very small amount, but definitely a second DNA source.
And Mr. Renteria, when you use the word excluded, is there any equivocation or is that something that's positive in the science of DNA testing?
That's right.
Okay, it's positive. There's no other explanation. Excluded means excluded. To beyond a shadow of a doubt, somebody's excluded.
Yeah, that 17 did not come from Phil Spector.
Beyond a shadow of a doubt, it did not come from him under any circumstances.
Yes.
Now, if we could now talk a little bit about the nails. We talked about these fingernail scrapings, but in addition to that, you tested some DNA purportedly from a broken nail kit. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you saw pictures of this broken nail before the nail was taken off and this kit was basically put together or collected. Is that true?
I don't recall looking at the pictures before. I sampled that particular item again after Dr. Harold did the screening of it, and I would have seen the broken nail. It would be in front of me, obviously, because I'm sampling it at that time.
Okay, and that's where the nail is actually excised or cut out or off the decedent, in this case, Miss Clarkson. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. What happened at the coroner's office, they removed the nail from the thumb.
Okay, and they have a special kit that they use to collect broken nails so that it could be treated separately than the rest of the nails. Is that your understanding, Mr. Renteria?
That's my understanding.
Okay, and you've run into those types of samples before, is that correct?
Yes.
And the idea is to, you're going to see presumably some DNA from the decedent on that nail because that's where it was taken from, so that wouldn't be unexpected, would it?
Yeah, most of the time you are, especially if the nails are cut close to the actual finger. When the coroner's office does their clippings or even their scrapings, you're probably going to get material from the victim themselves if it's very close to the finger. If somebody has longer nails, there are occasions, and I think it even happened here on the right hand scrapings, where there wasn't enough material, even from the victim, to get a profile.
Okay. And the idea here with the broken nails, just like the regular nail scrapings, is you're looking for foreign material, let's say skin or blood that doesn't come from the victim that you could maybe associate with some other person. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, so you had to actually collect this material. Isn't that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay, and did you do any type of presumptive blood test on your swab that you used to collect material from this broken nail bit?
No, as I stated yesterday, Dr. Lynn Harold did the screening prior to my collection.
Okay.
So I did not do a blood test, the KM test.
And this KM test, which has the full name of Kasselmeyer, using the phenolphthalein, basically, if you get a negative, then that might suggest that you, as to some samples, you might not go forward. But in this case, if you're looking for like a little bit of tissue, you might still go forward. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay, so you're looking for foreign material, and did you get any DNA from this particular broken nail sample?
Yes.
And did you get about a lot of DNA from this sample, like 44 nanograms?
I'll have to refer to my case file.
Okay, if you want to do that.
I'm not sure the exact amount.
Okay, I believe in your bench notes it's at page 433.
Okay. I believe that sample's identified as 85B as in boy. And if I could use a calculator very quick to get the right amount.
Use your brain, sir!
That's right. The total amount of DNA I recovered from that sample before any quantitation or amplification was performed was 44 nanograms.
Okay. And so that's clearly enough to do a DNA test under your minimum criteria of 1 nanogram. Is that correct?
Clearly.
Okay. And did you develop a genetic profile from that broken nail? In other words, were you able to analyze the DNA that you put into the sample, copy it, and then come with a result that could be compared to another person?
Yes.
And did that result, did it compare and match up at each genetic marker to Lana Clarkson and only Lana Clarkson, to the exclusion of any other people in the world?
Yes, that profile was consistent with a single source, and that source, the profile matched the DNA profile from Lana Clarkson.
And was there were no other genetic markers that were inconsistent with Lana Clarkson in that sample, is that correct?
That's correct.
They all went to her. Each one matched to her at each position that you tested, is that true?
Yes.
And as to Philip
Welcome in here.
Spector, as to all alleles or genetic markers that he had that were inconsistent with Miss Clarkson, in other words, where he differed, those were not identified in the sample at all. Is that true?
That's correct.
And so he was, to use your words, eliminated. Is that correct?
He is not the source of that DNA profile.
He would be eliminated as a contributor of that DNA that went into that testing from the broken nail. Is that true?
Yes.
Eliminated beyond any question, beyond any shadow of a doubt. Is that true?
Yes.
Now, when you, after you got done with doing some work on the bullets, you also tested the gun, a 38 caliber gun. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you talked a little bit about that yesterday, and you testified that you looked at certain portions of the gun and took samples from various different areas of the weapon. Is that correct, the gun?
That's right. Myself and Dr. Harold together chose different areas on the gun that would go further for DNA processing.
And it was your testimony, correct me if I'm wrong, that the gun had what appeared to you to have visible blood on it, or substances that you thought were blood. Is that true?
Yes, there were obvious areas, especially around the handle, where were blood type smears that you could see just with your naked eye.
And you actually, in order to confirm that, you actually did a Kasselmeyer test on those areas that you chose to test to confirm that there appeared to be blood there that had a chemical reaction. Is that correct?
Yes, on some of the areas, in fact, the original areas that I collected, again, in the presence of Dr. Harold, I did do the Kasselmeyer test, the KM test.
Okay. And with reference to the gun, if we could have exhibit next in order, which would be quadruple K?
Quintuple K.
Quintuple K. Put on the board. I'm going to show you a picture of a sight of a gun and ask you if you recognize this picture. Quintuple K. Do you recognize what that purports to be?
Well, there's no identifying markers as far as a DR number or item number, but it looks to be a close-up picture of a front sight of a gun that we're speaking about.
Okay, and for the record, Mr. Jackson, I will stipulate that this is the weapon, the gun that was recovered from the scene on February 3rd, 2003.
So stipulated?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. The jury will accept that as a proven fact.
When you looked at the gun, you saw some white material on the gun. Is that correct, in a particular location? Is that accurate?
Yes, if you're looking at this photo here, Quin K, I guess.
Quin K.
On the right side, it almost looks like a slope of a mountain. On the right side of the picture, about midway, or you see a serrated area, and about midway in that serrated area, you obviously see some whitish material. That's what I noticed when I first opened the box, that this was probably had some evidentiary value, and that's when I didn't touch it at that point, had it photographed, then delivered it to Dr. Harold.
Okay, and this is the white material that you're talking about, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is this this serrated edge, is it the sight of the gun, part of the sighting mechanism of the gun?
Yeah, I believe that's called the front sight. It's the rear side of the front sight, which would be almost to the very edge of the barrel of the gun up on top.
Okay, if we could have the entire Quinn K exhibit. This portion would be the front of the gun. This would be towards the back. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Going from left to right would be the front, from the front to the back. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay, so right about here is where the bullet comes out, the muzzle of the gun. Is that correct?
Yes, on the left side of that photo.
Okay. Now, you did some DNA testing of this particular area. Is that true?
Yes.
And when you did your DNA testing, did you get a result that you reported in your laboratory, when you published a laboratory report?
Yes. Yes, I did. May I refer to my report?
Certainly.
Yes, that particular sample, once the white material was removed by Dr. Harold for analysis that she would have performed, we sampled that particular area, which we identified as 1F, as in Frank. It yielded a DNA profile that matched the DNA profile from Lana Clarkson.
Okay, and when you say it matched at every location that was tested, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and were there any foreign DNA types detected at any location that you tested?
No.
And there was absolutely no DNA from any other person other than Lana Clarkson in that sample that you tested, is that correct?
That's correct. None detected.
And again, Philip Spector was excluded from contributing any of the DNA from that sample taken from the site of the gun, is that true?
That's true.
Now, Mr. Renteria, when you swabbed the gun, you swabbed some areas that were not obviously bloodstained. Is that true?
The areas I swabbed, again, was Dr. Harold and I worked side by side, and if she identified certain areas that microscopically were consistent with having blood on them, those areas would have been swabbed. I may or may not have KM'd them, but they would have been sampled. And our goal was to get different areas or different representations all around the gun, the handle, the barrel, the cylinder, to see if we can find any DNA or attribute a source to any blood that might be present.
Okay. Do you recall on or about September the 9th of 2004 being called before a grand jury here in Los Angeles County relating to your testing in this case?
Yes.
Do you recall giving testimony of some of your results similar to the testimony you're giving here today in court?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall before you gave that testimony that you were, as you were in this case, you were given an oath as a witness?
Yes.
Okay, and you recall just being asked questions by the representative of the district attorney's office and also some of the grand jurors?
Correct.
Okay, do you recall being asked by the representative of the district attorney's office this question, when you, page 617, and it goes over to 618. When you obtained samples from the gun, did you sample any of the areas that appeared not to have bloodstains, or did you just sample areas that appeared to be bloodstains? And you remember giving this answer to that question. I did sample some areas that did not appear to be bloodstains. Question, did you obtain results on any of those? Answer, yes. Question, were those items that you have already talked about, or are those additional items? Those are the items I already talked about. Do you recall giving that testimony?
Yes.
Okay, and how many different locations on the gun did you test and do DNA testing?
7.
Okay, and as to those 7 locations, did the genetic markers all come back to Lana Clarkson?
Referring to my report, Yeah, I believe we covered this yesterday. Of the 7, 2 of the samples yielded human DNA, but an insufficient amount to move on for DNA typing. So that left 5 that would move forward to DNA typing. And of the 5, 4 of them yielded DNA consistent with originating from a single source, and the DNA profile from those 4 samples matched the DNA profile for Lana Clarkson.
Okay, go ahead.
The 5th one, yeah, that was just 4.
Okay.
The 5th one was consistent with a mixture, very low minor donor as far as the secondary contributor. The major donor is consistent with Lana Clarkson, like the other 4 samples, a full profile. And the only indication that there was other DNA there from another source, and again, we discussed this yesterday, was a Y type at amylogenin, which would tell us, the only thing it'll tell us, is that the small amount of secondary DNA there was from a male. There was no other types in any other DNA markers to give any other information as to who that male donor may be.
Now, Mr. Renteria, when you testified before the grand jury, you talked about that Y at that one sample, you talked about there possibly being some male DNA there. Is that correct?
I don't recall my exact wording, but I guess I would have said that, yes.
And when you use the word possible, there could be other explanations for why the Y is there, because it was at extremely low levels. In other words, sometimes you use the term artifact.
Yeah, if this was called the Y based on my analysis of the DNA data from that sample, and also we have a process where another analyst will review the data just to make sure that we don't make any mistakes as the original analyst. And that second analyst, my tech reviewer, whose her name is Giselle Levine, she also agreed that that was a Y and not an artifact.
Okay, now,
so I would have to say at this point that that was a Y and not an artifact.
Okay, when you do DNA testing, do you ever repeat a sample to try to confirm it if there's something that's sort of on the edge of detectability?
Yes.
Okay, and this particular sample that you looked at was given a particular number, is that correct?
Yes, it was.
1J would be your sample number, is that true?
That's true.
Okay, and when you did your original testing of 1J, your laboratory has a threshold level by which you have to get above in order to report a positive result. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and the way that the testing works is that the DNA is measured using a kind of a yardstick or a measuring system known as RFUs. Is that correct?
Yes, RFUs, which stands for relative fluorescent units.
And essentially, when you put the DNA in the machine to analyze it, the type and the amount, it's quantified by the RFUs, by the relative fluorescent units. Is that a simple way to explain it?
Yes, the larger the number of the RFUs is directly proportional to how much of that particular DNA is present.
And when you test DNA, your laboratory has to set a particular level
blinked.
by which
I've
it
seen
has
it.
to meet in order for there
Very
to be a
rare.
reportable result.
bad.
Your own laboratory has to do that.
That's correct.
I think
Any
when we get one blink, that's when he switches personalities.
lab doing DNA will set a particular level of where a activity at a particular DNA marker has to pass in order to report it.
Okay, and they use this RFU level in order, that's the mark that they set, a particular height, for lack of a better word.
Yes.
And some laboratories use 150, some use 100, some even go lower. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, and in your laboratory, you actually go down to 75. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and in one of the samples you did for item 1J, you actually got 75 for this Y marker. Is that true?
75 or above, otherwise it wouldn't be in the report.
Okay, can you tell us what the RFU level was from your data at this point?
I don't know if I have that printed out in the DNA plot. I'd have to look at my case file.
Okay, we'll just do that a little later. Let me do this. Let me show you what I'll ask to be marked Quinn next in order.
L. He knows.
Quinn L.
Yes.
139. I'm going to show you a document that's Quinn L. Ask if you recognize what that might be.
Yes, this appears to be a color copy of one of my case pages. It has my initials at the bottom and a case number, page number.
Okay, and could you, is this part of your laboratory records and your data that you, that was created in this case regarding the testing involving this case?
Yes.
Okay, could we have this published for purposes of the jury?
Yes.
Quinn L. Oh, we're going to have to use the L. Okay, and this is known as an electropherogram, is that correct?
Yes.
And essentially, it's a printout of your data from DNA testing that you do. Basically, it has certain samples, and this is how you read the data, isn't that correct?
It's a printout. We actually read the data on a computer screen, but to capture it in a hard copy so we have something to put in the notes, we obviously save the electronic data. We will print it out in this type of fashion.
Okay, so let's start at the top. The first one is sort of a ladder that is used to make sure everything is measuring correctly. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the first line, kind of the first part of the bar graph, shows all the genetic types and their relative locations all in one sample, basically. Is that true?
Yeah, what you're looking at in the very top of this exhibit is one of two kits that are used. This kit is called Cofiler, C-O-F-I-L-E-R, and this shows only one particular color within Cofiler. It depicts amylogenin, which is on the far left. On the ladder, you can see an X and Y type. Then three other DNA markers that are present in that particular kit.
Okay, so this is just one bit of the data that includes those genetic markers that you just talked about. Actually, four of them. The sex one, the X and Y, correct?
Yes.
Okay, boy DNA, girl DNA. Basically, that's the...
Shit, coming through the old Venmo. Meg P. Church offering, $20. Holy shit, Meg, that's incredible. I'm going to put you on here real quick. You are number 2 on the next wheel. $20. Holy shit, though. That's amazing. That's incredible. Thank you so much. I'm going to give you a little love here. We're hanging out this morning. What are we even doing?
Hanging, banging.
No, we ain't messing around. Meg P just got us a little extra. Church bells. Church bells. Coming at us. Yeah, we still got a wheel. Ready to rock and roll, baby. Okay? Oh, I got you, baby. Woo, I got you. Yeah, we still got a wheel ready to rock and roll. And, you know what? Screw it. We're going to do the wheel right now. Let's go. I'm full of it. I got to use the bathroom anyway in a second. Let's do a wheel. I got my other camera back. Not looking all I had my webcam. I had to be using it. I fixed it. But we're back, baby. All right? That's all that matters. So look at this. Boom. Let me set it up. Good luck, everyone. Good luck. Good luck. Oh, shit. Oh, I gotta get in there. Hold on. Joanne picking up another victory. Holy shit. Damn. Congratulations. Get yourself another shirt. The cool thing about Publicly Buzzed and our merch section, always have new merch coming out. So if you wanted to start a collection of Publicly Buzzed merch, you can do it right here, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations. Joanne, is she still in the chat? Hopefully she's still in here. Hell yeah, that's amazing. That's cool. Let me look through here. I think she had won recently, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, she won. I don't know. I mean, 2 spins ago she had won. So, fuck. Joanne coming through. Racking up some merchandise. I love to see it. Hell yeah. Let me get you right here. Right here at the end here. Boom. All right. Second wheel has already commenced. And again, I appreciate everyone that comes through here, donates. The new wheel has 2 people on it right now. Michelle J, Meg P, rocking and rolling, baby. Joanne, congratulations. I'm going to run upstairs. I'm going to use the bathroom real quick and do the Meow Church. The Meowder Church shirt is awesome. And I have these right here. Ba-boom, ba-boom. Is camera going to make that work? Whoa, maybe not. Camera's not going to catch that, really? Really? Well, I have stickers. You can kind of see it there. I can't believe that the camera, it's so focused on me that it can't grab the sticker, which is crazy. But I have some sweet stickers. I'm going to have something planned for the stickers, though. I have some extra cool, I don't know how to really phrase it. Like, I don't know. I have some plans that I'm not exactly, I haven't built up my full, because I want to get some more stickers made. I want to do something cool, but I'm not quite there yet. So, but all right, I'll be right back, folks. I'm going to run upstairs. I'm going to use the bathroom. But yeah, thank y'all so much. Again, Will is still in play right here. Boom. Shanae. Number 3 on the second wheel. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you so much. I'm going to put this in here before I go. And I will be right back, folks. Absolutely amazing. Make sure I'm not missing anything before I do head out. No. And then as always, folks, just so you do know, like Meg came through there in the Venmo, the Cash App, the PayPal, Venmo, all that. I think there's a Buy Me a Coffee. All that is available as well to get on the wheel. And all right, yeah, love you guys. I'll be right back. We'll keep rolling.
Question that you're answering with that test, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, then you have, in this case, you've got the genetic marker, THO1, and then you have what's called TPOX, and then CSF1PO. Is that correct?
Yes.
These are all different genetic markers that vary within the human population. Is that correct?
Yes.
And basically, the first line, you put that on, that gets run so that you know that you can then compare the samples with that ladder. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so for example, on the top line, the X and the Y are working correctly because you see the X and the Y that you put in the test are accurately reported. Is that correct?
That's part of the ladder, yes, that both the X and Y are present.
Okay, and then every other marker that kind of deal with this particular system are represented. In fact, if that's not there, if there's something missing, there's a problem and you have to explain that. Isn't that correct?
In the ladder, that's correct.
Okay.
We expect to see the types that the manufacturer puts in the ladder every time we run the ladder. If it's not there, then we would have to look a little closer into the data to see why that happened.
That's a problem that would have to be investigated. So the first thing you do when you look at every printout or every page on the computer is you check to make sure the ladder is all complete, and you actually put your initials and put a little check mark there over to the right. Isn't that true?
Yes.
Okay, and so that starts it and says, okay, everything seems to be working okay. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you go to the evidence samples that are marked by a particular number. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so let's go to the first evidence sample, which is right below the ladder, and if we could highlight that with the markers and so forth. Well, I forgot, I'm not on the computer. These are the markers, and this is the result here, this first bar. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, and you said this was co-filer?
That's right. One of the 2 kits used, a co-filer.
Okay, so I put co-filer there. Is that basically the data from at least these markers that correctly show the results as to these particular locations?
Yes.
Okay, and the next one is 1J.
Correct.
This line right here, and that is the area of what part of the gun that you looked at?
The area we've been talking about.
Okay, that's the area of the left handle, is that correct?
That's right. The left side of the wood grip of the gun.
Okay, and you actually...
All right, one real quick. So Gypsy got a new bed yesterday. I got Gypsy a new bed. Oh my God, she is in love with it. So I also got a new pillow yesterday when I went shopping. So last night when I got in the bed, the pillow I was using, I just kind of, I just landed wherever. End of the night, it's at the end of the bed. It ended up in her bed, and yeah, I just gave it to her. And dude, she has not moved since this show started. Every time I go upstairs, she's in the same position. Like, she's loving it. She's in comfort heaven.
You ran this sample in this Profiler system, then you also ran it in another system called Profiler. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that way you got more of a read as to both of them. Is that true?
That's right. Well, again, when we have enough DNA in a sample.
Oh, gotcha. Man.
Back in 2003, we would routinely run that sample in both kits to get the most genetic information from that sample.
And when you ran it in this particular system, looking at 1J, you report out, at least this data shows it has X, in other words, female DNA only in this particular system. Is that true?
That's right. For this one kit, co-filer, the only callable type was X.
Okay. And all of these markers beyond that are all exactly consistent with Lana Clarkson. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And as to these markers here and all the other markers that you tested in co-filer, they all came back to Lana Clarkson to the exclusion of anybody else in the human population. Is that also true?
Yes.
And this is all of these markers are consistent with her and not consistent with Mr. Spector. He would be excluded. Is that correct in the co-filer system?
Correct.
Okay, and this would be the left grip of the gun, and we have a chart of that, and I would ask that it be, I show it to you, and then we put that up, and we keep this right where it is for now. You have a copy of it, Mr. Renteria. I think I gave you a copy of a chart with a grip. Do you have that handy?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and could we have this marked Quinn next in order?
M.
Okay, you recognize what this purports to be?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have that
Okay, let me
version.
let me show it to you.
Down up there. Get some of the cough drop.
Yeah, you gave me this one.
Okay, let me give you Quinn M as a, why don't we take this down for a moment, let you look at that first to make sure it's correct, with the exception as to the reference sample.
Yeah, I must admit I'm a little lost. It does happen from time to time in this trial because there's a lot of bullshit. Six-month in real life will trial.
Okay, looking at the chart that you reprinted, I guess, from my table.
Yeah, that was my intention, and again, does it appear to be accurate except for the reference sample should be 100 versus 101?
Well, there's that, and then there's also it looks like at DNA marker D18, which is just to the right of amylogenin on the table. The correct typing should have been 10 greater than 17.
Okay.
You put 10, comma 17.
Okay, so the two markers that were identified there were 10 and 17, but you sometimes put a little what do you call that little arrow thing?
Well, it's a less than or greater than sign.
Okay.
And what it means is that one type is taller or greater amounts than the second type.
Okay, and essentially that's part of the
Getting on
way
that
that you
thing.
report
Thank
your
you
results.
so
If
much,
you
Sheila.
notice something in the data that shows that there's a little more of one type than another, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's not something that is unusual in developing data from samples. In other words, you see that sometimes. Is that true?
Yes.
Does that have anything to do with the reliability of your results?
No.
Okay, and does it have anything to do with the validity or the calls that you make in declaring something to be a match or an exclusion, whatever the case may be?
No, when we're dealing with a single source sample, sometimes that happens where even though it's from one person and that person has two types at a DNA marker, there is on occasion, especially with evidence samples and sometimes even with reference samples, that one of the types will just end up coming out a little higher than the second type from that person. But we would indicate that somehow with the greater than, less than, or sometimes even in parentheses if the difference is even greater than that. So it is common.
Okay, if we could have that Quinn K put up then.
And sir, I'm also going to correct the 100 for the
Sure.
victim sample.
Okay, very good. Quinn M, excuse me. Now, you recognize these two pictures that are associated with this exhibit. The picture of the gun, is that true?
Yes.
And the picture of the left handle area, or a left view of the gun, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and this is the gun that you looked at with Dr. Harold, is that true?
Yes.
And you talked about blood and it wiping off if it was wet and so forth, but blood can also come off if it's dried, it can flake off, isn't that true?
Yeah, if there's a heavy concentration of blood and it's on a fairly smooth type of surface, in other words, not a porous surface, there is occasions where the blood can actually flake off of the smooth surface and fall free from it.
Okay. Now, this particular profile, and let's for purposes of our discussion right now, we'll talk about the X and the Y result in a few minutes, but all of the genetic markers that were found on the grip of the gun were consistent with Lana Clarkson. Is that correct?
I just know what's going on.
All right, Mr. Plord, you have to leave. Thank
Straight to jail to you, Plord.
Cross, though.
Leaving your phone on like a putz.
As I was saying, all of the genetic markers are consistent with Lana Clarkson throughout this profile, the markers that individualize people within the population. And again, the sex marker doesn't really individualize, does it?
It groups people into a sex. So if you don't count amylogenin, if this is your scenario, then all of the types seen other than amylogenin are consistent with coming from Lana Clarkson.
Okay. And in other words, all the amylogenin or the boy-girl DNA says is there some boy or girl DNA there and all the different amounts. Is that correct?
That's right, female and male.
Okay.
And this is consistent with, the major source, which again is Lana Clarkson being female. And there's a small amount of male DNA present.
Okay, and in your table of results here, you put the Y there in parentheses, and then you put an asterisk by it. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what that asterisk means is that you ran the sample twice in two different systems, and in one system you didn't get the Y, and the other system you got the Y.
Right. What it means is in one system the Y was callable, and in the other system it was below threshold and we weren't able to call it. So that's just putting a flag on the report to let the reader know we didn't get the same in both systems, but there was still enough data for us to call that a small amount of Y because it did come up in one system.
Okay, and I looked at, have you had a chance to determine how large of a level the Y was in the system that it was positive in?
No.
Okay. Now, in all the other samples on the gun, you found no Y DNA at all. Is that true?
That's true.
And you tested them in both systems, no Y DNA anywhere else on the gun. Isn't that true?
That is true.
And you talked about amounts of DNA to get a result. It would take, well, let me ask you this question. The type of testing that you do, Mr. Renteria, is so sensitive that you have to take special precautions to avoid getting your DNA involved in the test when you're doing the testing process. Is that correct?
Yes.
okay? And you know as an analyst that that's something that's very important to do, and you talked about all the things that you do yesterday, gloves, things of that nature. Isn't that correct?
That's right. We do. We take as many measures as we can, so the person actually doing the test doesn't introduce their own DNA into the sample.
Okay, and how important is that? In other words, why is that important?
Well, if you got your DNA into every single sample, it would be very hard, obviously, to try to interpret the results. But again, this test is very sensitive, and on occasion, it does occur, and it does occur in our laboratory as well as other laboratories in the country, that the analyst's DNA can show up in a particular sample. Now, if it shows up in all the samples, then you got a serious problem. You know, there's something going on where your DNA, for whatever reason, is maybe in a common reagent and it's been introduced into all samples, and that would be a serious problem. But there's also occasions where maybe in one particular sample, for whatever reason or however it occurs, it could be a skin cell or possibly a saliva cell, gets into a single tube, and you can come up with your type in that one particular tube. It's not as serious as the first scenario that I demonstrated, and on occasion when that does happen and we can attribute a source to that contamination, we're still able to move forward and use the results on the other samples, especially if all the other controls come out as expected.
Okay, and basically you can contaminate one sample, either a lot or a little. It's really impossible to tell how much contamination occurs if you make a finding that that's occurred. Isn't that true?
Well, you could always determine how much is there because, we quantitate the DNA. So if you had a sample, let's say, that shouldn't have DNA and it has a small amount of DNA, then we could say a little DNA got there. If you had a sample that had no DNA or supposed to have no DNA, and all of a sudden you have, like the one example you brought up, 44 nanograms of DNA, then we know a lot of DNA got in that particular sample. So you can tell if it's a lot or a little.
Okay, and when you talk about contamination and things of that nature, you talked about dandruff and stuff that comes from the eyes, the mouth, but also sweat. Sweat has DNA in it, and sometimes that can get transferred quite easily. Is that true?
Yeah, sweat could have skin cells, just mixed in with it, and within those cells would be the DNA.
Disgusting.
Okay, in this particular test run that you did you have a blank sample that you ran that had no DNA in it, that you took through all of the steps, 1 through 5, as a control? Did you have one of those samples in the same run that you did this particular gun sample along with the other gun samples?
Yes.
And the same with the bullets, is that correct?
That's correct.
And this particular sample that you ran has a name to it called a reagent blank, is that correct?
Yes.
That's where you put all the chemicals in it and you take it through the same steps, and then at the end you should get no result because it's a blank, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So it's just like a gun, you can fire it but no bullet comes out, is that correct?
That's correct.
And in this particular case, a bullet came out of this particular blank sample, is that true?
No.
Did the reagent blank show a genetic profile?
No.
Did you have any profile that was positive in your testing, a reagent blank profile?
Yes, in another set, not this particular set.
Okay, so let's go to that set. It was a reagent blank 3, is that correct?
I'm not sure the designation, but one of the particular sets of extractions that I did, and there were multiple because there was a lot of evidence looked at in this case, one of the reagent batch in one of the sets showed my DNA being present in that particular tube.
And close to 1 nanogram, is that true?
I'd have to look at the quantitation for that.
Okay, and that type of event is of such magnitude that you have to actually report that to your accrediting organization that you talked about yesterday. Is that true?
No.
Is that something you have to document in your laboratory so that when an audit is done, they can check to see whether things like that have occurred?
Yes, we call that unexpected results because it's not expected to have that, and we have a special form that we fill out. So when we do get audited by outside agencies, they usually will ask for that.
Art with Viv coming through the door. What's up, Viv? What are you doing? Coming through here with a $9.99. Viv getting on the wheel this morning. What's up, Viv? Good morning. Let me get you on here real quick. Bada bing, bada boom. Thank you very much. We'll give you a little love for it.
Baby, I got your money, don't you worry.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Building up the second wheel here. I think we're at 5 names right now. Thank you so much, Viv. Appreciate that. If you're not following Art with Viv, you definitely should be. She's incredible. Yeah, we've had an awesome morning here. I see Christopher Dewitt coming through here as well. The graphic in the corner, the graphic of Spector in the corner is so funny for me for some reason. And I have multiple of those. I have 3 of those that I like to interchange. So check this one out. Boom, we'll put a fro on that son of a bitch. Love it. I love it. I love it. I'm a little loud. Hold on. Fucked up my mic. I love it. There we go.
Binder to just try to get a feel if a laboratory is having.
You're right. You're right. I haven't had the bells for Viv in quite some time. Let me give Viv some bells for that. Boom. Make sure those are working too. Yeah. Hell yeah. Love it. Holy shit. And if Viv is going to be dancing into the live world of YouTube, look out, all right? That's absolutely amazing. That's cool. Hell yeah, Viv. Nice. Boom, $1.99 coming through here. Meg P, put Dizzy on the wheel, please. I will do it. Hell yeah. Dizzy getting some love out here. Meg P, absolutely unbelievable, per usual. Thank you so much. As we, again, begin and continue filling up this wheel. Let's go. We doing it, baby. Oh, wow. Another $1.99. Put Jersey Gin on the wheel. Yes, indeedy. I'll do it. Don't mind if I do. Wow. Incredible. It's getting wild out here right now. Jay in the chat right now. Christopher Dewitt. In the chat right now. We get wild this morning from Murder Church, baby.
Excessive, unexpected results, or if they're kind of in line with other laboratories. So,
holy shit. We rolling. What's going on? Meg P, another $1.99. Put Brooklyn on the wheel, please. I will do it. Wow. The train is moving right now. Where are we at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 4 away from another wheel this morning. Holy crap.
The documents are kept for an inspection, but we don't have to report that immediately to, in this case, AsClad Lab, our accreditation body.
Incredible.
Okay, and how many times has that happened to you?
This was actually my very first time since doing
Jay
DNA
on the wheel, I got you.
1994.
Wow.
This was my first event to have my DNA show up in one test tube. And since then, I think it's happened 1 additional time, so for a total of 2.
Okay, and has it happened to other analysts in your laboratory?
Yes, again, laboratories as big as ours and as many analysts that we have and as many extractions that we go through, you're going to have contamination events. Okay. That's why we have the controls, is to try to figure out what happened. Based on the types that we find, we can either still move forward with the data, or there's some occasions, especially if you can't attribute that DNA type to any source, where we can't count on the data and the entire set has to be done over. You just can't trust those particular results.
We're getting close now.
And you've actually, in this particular case, you came to the conclusion that you could trust the results. Is that correct?
Yeah, for various reasons, yes.
Okay, and that's because you didn't see your profile in other samples. Is that correct?
That's right. The only contaminating DNA was in that one single reagent batch tube within that set. So I had confidence, because I didn't see my types in the other samples, that the other samples were fine. The amplification control, the negative amplification control, and the positive control gave consistent results that we would expect. So it was, in my opinion, as well as others in the laboratory, because we kind of conferred on this, to how to move forward, that this was not a serious problem, and that we could move forward with the data without having to consume any additional samples from that set.
Okay, and what were the other samples that were tested in that set? If you could just give a, well, let me ask you this question. In this particular contamination where your DNA ended up in this blank, this particular set, there was enough DNA where you actually not only got a reading on the
One more.
male-female marker, is that correct? You got a reading there that your DNA was from a male, I would assume?
What I recall, the amount of DNA I had was
Thank you,
small
Jay.
in that sample. In fact, I was only able to do the one test kit and not both test kits for that particular sample.
That's a
Okay,
will.
and how many
That's how it's
genetic
done.
markers did
Thank you guys so
identify
much.
from yourself in this blank sample?
I believe from the first kit, which looks at 9 different markers plus amylogenin, I believe I was able to find mine types in all 9.
And did you report that out in your report, your 9 different types?
Let me check if I did. I know I put it in words that the reagent batch gave unexpected results, but however, that DNA profile was consistent with the analyst performing the test, which was me. And because I don't really want my DNA profile published, I don't know if I actually put it in the table of
Okay.
results.
Next in order,
N, triple N.
Quinn N. Showing you Quinn N. Going to just show this to you. It's something that I typed up and asked if this is comports with your DNA profile that you typed up in the reagent blank.
I'll have to go to my case file to see. I don't have my types memorized.
Oh, okay.
So I'll have to
I
see.
thought maybe you did. I apologize. At the break, maybe you could check that. Let's not take the time
Oh,
now
okay.
when the jury's here. Let's do this, though. Let's do 2 things. Verify that that's your profile, and also verify the amount of DNA that was in the profile or in the that you quantified. And then what I'm going to ask you, once you do that, is to answer this question too. Get a little bit of why DNA, without a profile, would you need much less contamination? That's sort of where I'm going with that, so that if you can think about that when we go forward.
Can you reword that last part?
The last part is that you had your full profile in one system that was the result of an inadvertent contamination that didn't spoil the whole testing process, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is it possible to have less contamination and just see the Y marker and not the rest of the markers like you had?
I see what you mean, yes.
Okay, all right. Now, the next in order would be Quinn.
Oh,
Okay.
What was the description of Clinton?
well, it's a document. I didn't.
It is a genetic profile
Just what I would have said.
from the reagent bank, RB3 genetic profile.
The chart?
Yes, it's a chart. Thank you. Mr. Renteria, I'm showing you Quinn O, and it is a chart with some pictures, some of the other ones, and ask if you recognize what this is.
Yes, this appears to be a photograph, a closer-up photograph of the eyelashes that were found on the toilet tank lid in the downstairs bathroom.
Okay, and does it also show the reference sample results for Mr. Spector and Ms. Clarkson? Yes. And with the exception of the 101, as far as Ms. Clarkson, is the reference sample correct, and the same would be for Mr. Spector?
Again, I'll have to look at the table.
I want to go to Vegas one day for real.
Yes, the references look fine.
Okay, and now look at the...
That'd be
this
freaking
was
rad.
characterized as item 13
No, it would be
in the
cooking.
collection process, correct?
Yes. Yes, the types that you typed in appear to be correct.
Okay, if we could have this exhibit Quin O put on the overhead. Okay, so looking at this particular table of STR DNA results as to this one sample only, basically, just like with the other ones, we have the bottom table shows the evidence item with a picture of the eyelashes. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the eyelashes were collected by the Sheriff's Department. In fact, you were at the scene and you knew that these were given an identification number of item 13 in the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department evidence collection numbering system. Is that correct?
Yes.
For this case, and it was given a unique number to track through the system. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay, and the top two tables show the reference sample results along with the genetic markers that are associated with that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so when you obtain this item, where did you obtain it from? In other words, how did you come into possession of these two eyelashes, and as far as testing is concerned?
Well, they were transported back to the laboratory when I returned that first night. And I believe they stayed in my possession the whole time until I analyzed them.
Okay, and when you saw these on the first occasion, they were, as they were depicted here in this photograph, they were on the top of the toilet tank, essentially. Is that correct?
Yes.
And they, somebody who saw them, I'm not sure if it was Mr. Kyle or somebody else, said they appeared to be taken off and placed there. In other words, they weren't out of place as far as, well, they appear to be placed there. Is that correct?
Right. They were just sitting on top of the lid.
Okay. And you looked at this, and did you see any blood that was associated with this particular item?
Nothing visual, no.
Okay. And did you do any type of presumptive testing that would suggest that there was any blood associated with these eyelashes?
I did not.
Okay. And did you type or did you extract these eyelashes?
Yo, Joanne, who has been on a streak on the wheel coming through here. And again, here is the kindness to the Buzz Nation that I love. This is what I love to see. $5 holler coming through. Please put Young Black Economist on the wheel, which I will do. And that's absolutely amazing. The kindness in this community is next level. And that's starting a new wheel out as well. I don't know if we'll finish that wheel. We could. We're still going to be going for a little while here, folks. And I want to plug something. As soon as this show ends, there's going to be a drop for members only. If you're not membered up, you're going to want to become a member because it's going to be a video. Me and my buddy John from Appalachia, we went deep into the mountains of West Virginia. The video is about 22 minutes long. It's been up on Patreon for a minute. So if you're not on Patreon, this is the time to see it. Members only. I've been dropping these. There's a few videos like this out there. I'm going to be doing more of these. And I'm really proud of it. We went and explored this abandoned and crazy old mining company. So please stick around if you are a member. And if you're not a member, you're going to want to become a member. I'm just saying. Thank you so much, Joanne. Appreciate it.
This is gun country.
And try to get DNA into a tube and take it through these 5 steps that you previously discussed.
Yes.
And were you successful in getting a result?
Yes.
And did you get a mixture of 2 people's DNA?
Yes, I did.
And looking at, let's look at the amylogenin in the box next to it. Let's highlight that, and we'll just discuss that for a moment. No, the whole thing. All the way down. Yeah, thank you. Okay, and this is one genetic marker and the boy-girl marker together that we're showing now, that we're highlighting, correct?
Yes.
And because there's more than 2 alleles in the evidence sample, which is on the bottom, you know that it has to be a mixture. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you compared this mixture with the known samples for Philip Spector and Lana Clarkson. Is that true?
Yes.
And does all of the DNA, is it accounted for in this particular evidence sample by a mixture between Lana Clarkson and Philip Spector? In other words, if you take them together, does this account for everything in the evidence sample?
I believe you're asking me is the types that I got in the evidence sample, are they accountable for coming from either Lana Clarkson or Phil Spector?
That's the exact question.
Yes.
Okay. And so there's nothing foreign as between both of them. Is that correct? In other words, nothing that comes from some third person other than the two. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
And essentially, the majority of this sample comes from Lana Clarkson. You talked about major and minor contributors. Is that correct?
That's right. Lana Clarkson would be consistent with being the major donor of this sample.
Okay. And it would be consistent with sort of the background of this
shit.
evidence, that if
Wow.
Lana Clarkson took
Hey,
off these eyelashes and put them where they were found, that maybe some of Mr. Spector's DNA that was on her hands could have been transferred to the eyelashes. Is that true?
That could be possible, yes.
Okay. There's no way to really know exactly how the DNA got on her eyelashes, but you can, basically, there's several different possibilities. Is that true?
Well, the DNA, the major part is from her, so we know the DNA that's consistent with her came from her own cells. But the foreign DNA that doesn't match her and is consistent with Phil Spector, we don't know what type of cells that is from.
Okay, so it could be from, you trace contact. In other words, some of Mr. Spector's DNA is on her body, on her hands.
That's a possibility.
In fact, there's a lot of research that's been done in the forensic science community that you're familiar with that has actually studied that. Is that true?
Yes.
And in fact, they, using the analogy we did yesterday with the pen, they've actually studied people touching an object and then testing the object and finding their DNA.
Yes.
Okay, and in this particular instance, for example, the brandy snifters that were collected, there were mixtures of DNA on multiple items of Mr. Spector and Lana Clarkson. Is that true?
Yes.
And let me give you sort of an example of how.
There we
something might
go. Couch juror said they did not want to miss the drop that's coming immediately after this show. All right, you want to see me out in the wild? You want to see me, this personality, out in an abandoned building, almost got stung to death by bees? It is crazy. You guys are gonna love it. Couch juror also getting on the wheel as I do my plug-in. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
get transferred, and you tell me whether or not this is correct or possible. Let's say
Beers in the chat. Beers in the chat.
Mr. Spector handles a glass, and later on, Ms. Clarkson has possession of that glass. Could some of Mr. Spector's DNA get from the glass to Ms. Clarkson on her hands?
Yeah, in the realm of anything's possible, that is a possibility, depending on how many skin cells the initial donor put on them. But again, for the items you're speaking of, the brandy snifters and the ginger ale bottle, I did not sample the area where a hand would usually go. I sampled the areas where your lips would usually touch if you're drinking from a glass or from a bottle. I purposely stayed away from the hand part of those types of items.
Okay, and there was one of those glasses, one of those brandy snifters was in the bathroom, is that correct?
Yes.
All right,
And-
at this time, we're going to break. Keep in mind the admonition, ladies and gentlemen, 15 minutes. Thank you.
I'll see CH wants me to put somebody on the wheel. Let's see here. Let's see where we're going. Part 6 for about 49 more minutes, and we're going to keep on moving here. Yeah, we're still a little bit. We're about halfway through Murder Church. Appreciate everyone for being here, and we're about to spin a wheel right now. And yeah, CH wants me to put somebody else on the wheel in his spot. I think CH has a win here recently, also, or someone's maybe even given them a shirt. Let me see. I'm gonna put. Let me look through here. I'm gonna put Christopher. I'm going to put Chris Duet on here is what I'm going to do. Huh? Get him a shirt. I'm going to get a shirt to Vegas for him to walk around in. Let's see if we can do that. Hell yeah. Thanks everyone for hanging out here today. I appreciate it. Yeah. Well, let's spin a wheel. Let's go. I kind of lost my train of thought. I was like, well, what are we doing? We're spinning a freaking wheel. Let's go. Let's go. Good luck, everyone. Dizzy racking up some shirts also here. Holy shit. Wow. Dizzy, congratulations. Getting in there. Let's go. Nice. I think Dizzy Oh, I was putting her in the next one there. I need to put her in the winner circle. Boom, boom, boom. Let me go down here real quick. Boom. Dizzy. Winner circle. Bada bing, bada boom. Bada bing, bada boom. Thank you very much. That's the second full wheel going down. That one was clear. That one wasn't even a wheelgate situation. Hell yeah. Congratulations, Dizzy. Boom. 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 You can, dude, the one I wrote on Friday, Pokebomb's name, it was, they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it. It even said that. Those are all actually full years of wrestling, like the entire year of like 1986 NWA Saturday Night, like all on discs. Like, I'm an absolute insane person. Thank you all so much. What a great morning. We're going to keep rolling. We still got a little bit longer left. Part 6, Steve Renteria, criminalist, continues his testimony. And yeah, we'll see how much further we get here this morning. Again, I'm going to keep plugging it. I'm going to show you as well. As soon as this ends, folks, I'm going to do this right here. I want to show you. Right here. I'm going to unlist this. I'm going to put it on members only, and you will be able to see this 22-minute, the historic Entman Company store. It's creepy as fuck. Okay, so get ready. Get ready, folks. It's going to drop immediately after Murder Church this morning.
And alternates and witness are present as heretofore. You may resume, Mr. Floyd.
Thank you. If we could have another photograph that purports to be of the bathroom area at 1700 Grandview Avenue with evidence marked next in order, Your Honor.
Quintuple P.
Quinn P.
Yes.
Mr. Renteria, I'm going to ask you to look at this particular
dropping by,
photograph
dude.
that's now on the screen. Do you recognize the general area that this photograph depicts?
Yes.
Okay, and just so that we're oriented, this is the downstairs bathroom at the residence on 1700 Grandview Avenue, the Spector residence, correct?
Correct.
This is part of the residence that you looked at for evidence in this particular case and ultimately tested evidence from. Is that true?
Yes.
So the item 13 would be on this toilet tank right here to the left of the photograph where I'm pointing. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then the other items, there was a comb, some type of hairspray that was collected. Is that true?
Yes.
And then there was a burgundy towel, item number 12. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then there was this item 24, which was this glass that had that you ultimately did some DNA testing on. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then the rag was in front of the toilet, but that's not depicted here in the photograph. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's essentially all the evidence that was in this downstairs bathroom. Is that true?
Those are the only items that were collected.
Okay. And now, that's not the only thing you did in this bathroom as far as evidence. You looked all through the bathroom for evidence that you felt might be of evidentiary value, as you use that term. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. Now, were there other things that you did at the scene, such as if you saw a spot on the rug or on something else, and did you swab it to see if it gave a positive KM, and if it did, you collected it?
In the scene in general?
In general, that's what you did.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I did on the second day before the luminol is there were some darker areas on the burgundy carpet, that you could see visually with your eye. So before the luminol examination, what I did with those areas, and there were a few of them, I'd say maybe 4 or 5 different areas on the foyer carpet directly in front of the victim. Then there was also a couple areas on a couple of the steps on the lower portion of the stairway that were darker than the rest of the carpet. So before I luminol, I checked those areas with the KM test. And I think I indicated the areas I checked by putting a white X mark on those areas. Those areas were KM negative, so they weren't collected.
Okay, because basically if you got a KM negative, you don't expect to get any type of DNA from blood. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, now, Mr. Renteria, you also, because you've been a criminalist for a number of years, you look for, the part of the luminol was to look for like somebody cleaning up blood. Like let's say if somebody had if there was blood in the sink, but it was all wiped down, you couldn't visually see it, you could spray it with luminol and it would fluoresce, because that's essentially what luminol does, is to try to pick up that blood that's been wiped down or smeared so it's not visible to the naked eye.
Yes.
Okay, and so did you do that this bathroom area?
Yes, I did.
All negative?
Yes.
In fact,
I'm sorry, with the exception of the bloody rag.
right, where it was on the ground.
that area where the rag was sitting on the carpet, that gave a strong luminol positive because it had obvious blood on it.
Okay, and in addition, your experience is that you even sometimes do some chemical testing of faucets and drains that are within a particular location if you suspect that there's been some type of cleanup activity after an alleged crime or incident. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, and on this particular sink you did that, is that true?
Yes.
You actually take a swab and you swab the inside of this drain and you swab inside of it, and then you process that swab and do chemical testing on that swab to see if there's any traces of blood. Isn't that true?
Yes, the top surface of the sink was sprayed with luminol. Some areas did give me a positive reaction, very weak, but those areas were tested after with the KM reagent. Those were negative. I also tested about 1 inch down in the drain of the sink, and that tested KM negative.
Okay, and that's this drain here, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's something that criminalists do when they go to a scene. If they suspect somebody, the blood was washed down a drain, they'll test the drain itself. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And did you go upstairs and test the drains there, or did Mr. Kyle do that? Who would have been responsible for that?
Mr. Kyle was responsible for observing the other bathroom or bathrooms upstairs.
And had there been a KM positive, that would have been reported to you, and you would have collected those areas. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, so by not reporting it to you, you presume that to the extent he did it, it was negative. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's what he reported to you, in fact. Isn't that true?
He did not report any positive areas. Correct.
Okay. Now, the one thing that you did do luminol on upstairs was the area where the coat was found, that room. Is that true?
Yes.
You sprayed the area where the coat was. Is that correct?
Correct. The
And
floor.
And
yes.
you didn't get anything positive from the floor. Is that true?
Yes.
And then you also, there's a chair there that's in that room where that coat was, like a Baca lounger type chair. You sprayed that. Is that correct?
I don't recall if I actually sprayed the chair. I recall spraying the floor immediately below where the jacket was recovered.
And did you test some areas with your KM testing, your Castlemeyer testing?
I don't recall doing that.
Okay. Was that room basically, except for the finding of the jacket, was there any other evidence collected from that room that you're aware of?
As far as blood evidence that I collected, no.
Okay. And how about Mr. Kyle? Did he point out anything to you other than the jacket?
No.
He's the one that actually found the jacket, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Now, were you aware as to how that jacket actually got to the location where Mr. Kyle pointed it out to you? In other words, do you know who put it there?
You mean before any events occurred?
Well, no. The jacket was on the floor. You observed it at that location. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know how the jacket was put there? In other words, who put it on the floor?
I have no idea.
Do you know who last?
Well, the answer was, I don't know.
That's right. I don't know, sir.
The answer will stand.
Right. Were you aware of whether or not, when Mr. Spector was arrested on that day that you went there, that he asked a police officer to get...
This calls for hearsay, it calls for
Sustained.
speculation.
Sustained.
Okay. Getting back to the bathroom, this is the downstairs
Lord,
bathroom.
so awkward.
You tested the burgundy towel that's...
And I think I see why they're using him pretty frequently right now, though, right? I mean, they're using Rosen also, but like they've benched everyone else. Bodden's really the best one.
depicted here, and you looked for visually anything that you thought even resembled a blood stain. Is that correct?
You're right. That exam was done at the laboratory, not at the scene, but I
Okay.
did not find any blood on the burgundy towel.
Okay. Now, if we could get back to the eyelashes, and we'll finish up with that. If we could have the chart, which was quad O. This particular profile.
Not quad, quintuple.
Excuse me, I apologize.
That's all right.
There's some results that you put NT, and there's 4 of them here at these locations that are on the right hand of the chart. Does NT mean not tested?
Yes,
Okay, so you only tested the eyelashes under one of your systems, is that true?
that's correct, because there wasn't enough DNA to split it up in order to be able to get results in both systems. I used almost all of it for the one system.
Okay, and was there approximately 1.5 nanograms in the sample that you quantified?
Yeah, approximately, yes.
Okay. I now want to move to another test that you did on another portion of evidence, or another piece of evidence, and have this purports to be a picture of a holster, and I don't have this on the computer, but I'm going to show it on the overhead and ask you some questions about that. May I have this marked next in order? Quinn
Q.
Quinn Q. Okay. With reference to your work in this particular case, did you ever do any forensic analytical work on a holster that purportedly was collected from a drawer in the residence, and the drawer being in a bureau in the foyer area of the home?
Referring to my notes, I'm sorry, sir, do you know what J number that was receipted into the laboratory? It's not depicted in the picture. My notes indicate there were 2 different holsters.
Okay, if we could, hold on.
Or the item number that it was collected under.
Item number 2.
Okay, that'd be helpful.
That's good?
Yes, on August 6, 2003, in the presence of Dr. Harold, I did examine item number 2 for the presence of blood. I did a couple KM tests on different areas, and that was negative. I took a swabbing of the outside of the holster, just in general, but I didn't do any analysis on that. I just took a swabbing and kept it and froze it.
Okay, basically you were looking for traces of blood on this item and it all came back negative and you didn't take it any further, is that true?
That's true.
Okay, and even though some detectives suspected blood on it, once you...
That calls for speculation. It's irrelevant.
I haven't, it sounds like it's going to, if you get into what anybody else said or reported, it's going to be hearsay.
Let me ask you a hypothetical question. If somebody looks at an object and they see what they suspect as blood, it's the KM test that really is more definitive than the visual observation. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Quinn, next in order. R. Now, I want to get back to the weapon, the gun that you did some DNA testing on. It's correct, Mr. Rentier, that you actually did some testing of a portion of the gun inside the barrel. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I'm showing you Quinn R. And this has the item number J309759. This is a close-up photograph of the barrel of the gun that you did some DNA testing from. You being swabbing certain areas, is that correct?
Yes.
And one of the areas of the gun that you did was the, we already talked about that sighting area, which is the top of the gun, if I'm looking at it correctly. Is that true?
That's correct.
Okay, and then you did the outside of the barrel, in other words, areas out on the outside edge of the barrel. Is that true?
Yes.
And then you did further back on the gun, but then you also did inside the barrel, right in here. Is that true?
That's right. The sampling that I did was about a 1 centimeter from the very end of the barrel back towards the gun. And that's about a ½ an inch. So I swabbed the outside area as one sample, and then the inside of the barrel as a second sample.
Okay, and before you did your DNA testing, you did a Kastle-Meyer presumptive blood test on that sample. Is that correct?
That's correct. After I took the sample that I would eventually go and attempt DNA typing, I immediately went back to the evidence, swabbed it with another swab, and then did a KM test on that swab.
Okay.
So it was after the collection.
Okay, but it was of the same area. In other words, the idea was to see whether or not you got a positive or a negative on the KM, correct?
Correct.
Okay, next in order, Your Honor.
S.
Quinn S. Mr. Venturi, this particular chart, have you taken a look at it? One of your copies? We've got another chart that we marked Quinn S. Before we put it on the board. Did you take a look at it to determine whether or not the genetic markers correctly comport to your data that you generated in your DNA testing result?
Yes.
Okay, and does it, with the exception of Lana Clarkson's reference sample, should be 100 versus 101?
Correct.
Okay, if we could have Quinn S. put up on the board. Mr. Venturi, with reference to the gun, Quinn S., that's on the screen now, you recognize this as being the weapon that you did the sampling from, the Colt 38 caliber stub nose 2-inch revolver?
Yes.
And inside the barrel, where I'm pointing now, is where you did the sampling that comports to this result, and you labeled this sample 1L gun inner barrel.
Correct.
Okay, and were you able to get a genetic profile of the DNA that was recovered from this sample?
Yes.
And did all of the DNA come back to one contributor?
Yes, it did.
And did all of the DNA come back to one contributor who matched the profile of Lana Clarkson?
That's correct, yes.
And were there any foreign genetic markers associated with this sample from any other person other than Lana Clarkson?
No.
And with reference to your Kastle-Meyer test, your presumptive test for blood, was that negative for this inner barrel sample?
Yes, it was.
I want to show you you were shown some photographs of another photograph of the chair, item 40, be marked as exhibit next in order.
Quintuple T.
Q quintuple T. Mr. Venturi, I'm going to ask you to look at this particular photograph as soon as it gets on the screen, and I believe that we looked at another one that was marked that was similar to this. This is item 40, at least a portion of it, and the top of it, it actually goes, the top of the chair is actually in this direction. Is that true?
That'd be correct.
Okay, so this is sort of a skewed view of it from, from a different angle, but one of these samples you actually did some testing on, is that correct?
Yes.
And the actual sample that you collected was this, what appears to be a larger stain right here that I'm pointing to. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. And was that the only stain that was on this piece of wood that was part of this chair? Or were there other stains that look like blood?
Yes. In fact, in this photo here, you can see several areas of small blood spatters.
Okay.
That one was isolated to collect, to perform DNA typing.
Okay, so like at the top here, you see little specks here, some little, very little, some a little bigger. and this one that you collected was even larger. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, and then there's a bunch of specks. In fact, there's numerous specks on this one little area. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. And they all, at least visually, they all look like blood. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so it would be redundant to test every one, essentially. In other words, you just wanted to answer a question whether or not this was Lana Clarkson's blood or not. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. And so picking one out of this group of them would answer that question, essentially. Is that true?
Yes.
Do you know, if you look at all of these areas on this just one little portion, how many spots of blood were there?
I did not count them.
Okay. When you looked at Miss Clarkson's slip, and I believe if I could ask to have this exhibit put up next in order, 4196, and it would be Quinn.
You.
This is a picture, I believe you've been shown this before, and this shows a number of stains on this particular garment, which purports to be the slip that Miss Clarkson was wearing at the time of her death. Do you recognize it as being that?
Yes.
Okay, and for example, there's some bigger stains, some smaller stains, and my question is that, do these arrows represent all of the stains that are on this garment?
You would have to ask Dr. Harold that question.
Okay, the ones that you were interested in were the ones that you labeled green, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and you understood Dr. Harold to say that these ones that are labeled red are what she thought was blood, is that true?
Well, it's what her opinion is blood, not thought that was blood.
Okay, in other words, in her view,
yeah, where
or
those
her
red
opinion.
arrows are indicate where she observed microscopically blood.
Okay, I'm going to show you the actual photograph. Are there other things, did you look at the garment yourself?
Only to sample it for the 3 stains that I collected.
Okay, so do you know whether or not there were other stains that look like blood that are not labeled here?
I don't know.
Okay. Now, did you test a tequila bottle, Mr. Renteria?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and was that tequila bottle found in the kind of a living room area along with some glasses and
Porter
things of
Michelle.
that nature?
Yes.
Okay, and were you able to get any type of a result off of the tequila bottle as far as a DNA typing result?
If I may refer to my report,
Okay.
that was identified as item number 16.
I wonder if these work. Done one of these in a while. Yeah.
The sample I took from the mouth of the bottle of item 16, the tequila bottle, did give human DNA. However, there was an insufficient amount to move on for DNA typing.
Okay, and so basically no
right, I'm gonna get my
reportable
Lunchable.
result as far as whose DNA
I got
it
real
might be,
hungry
is that
there.
correct?
That's correct.
Right back.
Now, when before we broke, we were talking about amounts of DNA, and we were talking about on the left handle of the gun, sample 1J, which you, I believe, testified was from the left handle of the gun, that you got a Y result on, or male DNA result, as well as some female DNA? Do you remember talking about?
I remember talking about that, yes.
Okay, and we were talking about whether or not that result, in one system you tested, you didn't get a Y marker that you could report, correct?
Correct.
And then in the other one you did, and the question was, how far above your minimum level was that? You were going to check on that?
That's right.
Okay.
Our
get-
guide level for reportable results is 75 RFUs, which we spoke about earlier, and the Y for that particular sample in Profiler Plus reached that level, exactly 75, and that's why it was reported.
Okay, and if it was only 74, you would have not reported it, correct?
Correct.
And basically, the X that was there, did it have 3,881 RFUs?
Yes.
So there was a huge, huge disparity between the X, or the female DNA, and the minimal Y DNA. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there any way to tell the jury how long, or how that Y actually got into the sample?
No, it was on the piece of evidence. I can't say when it got there or how it got there.
How long it was there?
That's right, I cannot.
Or what male in the human population may have contributed. Is that correct?
That's right, I cannot.
Can you exclude yourself as being, through inadvertent contamination, having contributed that during the processing of the sample?
Yes.
Okay, and how can you do that?
In that particular sample set, all the controls, all 4 that we spoke about previously, gave expected results. And if I would have contaminated that particular item, I would have expected to see more contamination probably in other tubes. So all 4 gave the correct results. So in my opinion, that Y did not come from my DNA.
Now, in your other contamination event, you only contaminated 1 sample.
Yes.
Okay, so how do you know you didn't contaminate just 1 sample in this other run that you did? In other words, what proves that?
Well, I can't prove it absolutely, but that is my opinion based on evaluating the other controls in the sample set that did not come from me.
Okay. Next in order, Your Honor, a photograph of a chair, which is 4.194.
V.
Quinn V. Do you recognize what's depicted here, Mr. Renteria?
Yes.
And this is a picture of the chair, which was Los Angeles Sheriff's Department item 40, correct?
Correct.
And this was physically taken from the death scene to the Sheriff's Department Crime Laboratory where you work, correct?
Yes.
And this was one of the photographs, one of the many photographs of the chair that was taken. Is that accurate?
Yes.
One of the things you did is you measured the height of the chair. Is that true?
Well, the yardstick was put in place for the photography to give the viewer of the picture an example of how tall it was.
Okay. And was there measurements taken of the chair, let's say from the ground to where a person would sit?
Again, Dr. Harold was responsible for the reconstruction. She may have done those measurements, and they would be in her case file.
Okay, so just for the jury's understanding, as far as this particular photograph, Quinn V, it looks like the chair, at least the relative height of the chair is about 3 feet. Is that about right? Standard yardstick, 3 feet?
Well, if that is a yardstick,
Okay.
I know you can get sticks that are, taller than 3 feet. I can't really see it from here.
Okay, we'll wait for Dr. Harold to
Okay.
she's the one that was looking at the chair and measuring it and so forth. Is that true?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. Now, you were at the scene and you actually saw the decedent when she was in the chair. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Now, as a criminalist, when you go to a scene, you look at everything there. In fact, you spent many, many hours at that scene. Is that true the first day?
Yes.
Okay. You looked all around the scene for anything that was of potential evidentiary significance. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You were looking for tooth particles, things like that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You also looked at where the furniture was and things of that nature. Isn't that true?
That's true.
Now, did this chair, you see the 4 legs on the chair? It was on carpeting, basically, this kind of shag carpeting. Each of these legs was into the carpeting. Isn't that correct?
That's how I recall, yes.
Okay. And did you happen to note or look at the legs of the chair to see if there was any indentations other than where the chair was actually situated?
No, I don't recall looking for that or observing that.
Do you recall in your notes that you stated somewhere that you looked at the chair and where it was located and that it didn't appear to have been moved before it was collected?
I don't recall that in my notes.
Okay. Is that something that you would look for? In other words, if the chair was sort of, if there were indentations but the chair was at a different location, is that something you might have looked at?
Not necessarily, no.
We could have photograph 3.037 marked next in order.
W.
Quinn W?
Yes.
You see this exhibit, Quinn W, on the screen?
Yes.
And that's you in the picture, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And is this picture, was it taken on the day that you were doing your luminol testing? The chair is gone.
Yeah, I really can't say. The chair was gone, but I didn't leave immediately after the chair was put into the evidence van. So I don't know if that was the first day or the second day.
Okay. In any event, there's some X's that are here, and you can see it better in the actual photograph. Maybe I'll show that to you. You can see little, look like white X's on the floor right in front of you. They're not real clear on the overhead, but they're clear in the photograph itself. Does that suggest to you when this photograph might have been taken?
Yes, it does. I think I mentioned previously that before I luminoled, I checked some areas that were darker in color on the carpet. And if they were negative, I put an X there just to remind me I tested those already.
Okay.
So this would be the second night.
Okay, the second day you were here, and then on the stairway itself, you marked a bunch of X's. Is that true?
Yeah, I don't know how many, but there were 2 or 3 areas that I tested which were KM negative.
Okay, and when you did your luminol testing, you sprayed with this garden hose type thing, all this luminol. You sprayed it all around this particular area?
Yeah, garden sprayer, but yes.
Okay, what is a garden sprayer in the forensic
Well, a garden hose
field?
to me is, a 50-foot long hose that,
Okay.
shoots out a big volume of water. The garden sprayers is one of those things you could get at Home Depot or Lowe's and pump up the pressure. Then you can adjust the nozzle so it's a heavy stream or a light mist. That's a garden sprayer.
Okay, and that's where you mix up, what, several gallons of chemical and start spraying it?
Yeah, for this particular job, I probably would have done at least 1 to 2 gallons of the luminol reagent. And then once prepared and mixed, I would have started spraying.
Okay, and you sprayed, did you spray more than once, any of the areas? You can actually spray more than once, can't you?
You mean over and over again?
Yeah, you can, if you think you see something, you can go back over it.
Yeah. If you spray originally and you think you saw some type of reaction, you can go back and then spray more of the chemical just to see if it would come up.
Okay, and so basically the luminescence, it glows for a period of time, depending upon how much reaction there is, and then the glow goes away, and then you have to spray it again to redo it, basically.
Correct.
Okay, and when you were looking at it on the shag carpet, and you were doing it while you were standing, is that true?
Yes.
Okay, you weren't on your hands and knees or anything?
No.
Okay, all right. And you sprayed the wood part of the stairs as well as the clay part of the stairs. Is that all true?
Yes.
I want to show you what was previously marked as Exhibit GGGG. Defense exhibit. I'm going to ask you some questions about that. You recognize this photograph, 4G?
Yes.
And are you this person within the photograph?
Yeah, holding a clipboard, I think. That is me.
Okay, wearing kind of a whitish shirt, talking to somebody, it looks like from the coroner's office, is that correct?
Yeah, I believe that's Dan Anderson, who's either assistant director or supervisor at the coroner's office.
Okay, and from other testimony in the case, they got into the scene and started doing their work later on, like after Mr. Kyle got there. Is that your recollection?
Yes, that's my recollection.
Okay, and you had been there since 2:30, and they got there, let's say 7:30, somewhere around there?
Yes.
Okay, and you see in this area of the photograph, there appears to be some type of a marker. I'm not sure what number it is, but my question is, were there markers of evidence that had been located by the detectives and yourself prior to the coroner staff getting there?
Yes.
Okay, and the way it works when a scene is being investigated, a death scene or whatever, is that the detective who is assigned to the case, or detectives, whatever the case may be, will look around and spot things and point them out to yourself and Mr. Kyle as criminalists, and then you would document them further and eventually collect them. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what usually happens.
Okay, so I want to show you another exhibit and ask that this be marked next in order. And basically, the marking of the items on the stairs, the tooth part, because that had already occurred by the time the coroner staff got there. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Next in order, which would be Quinn.
Quintuple X.
Okay. Quinn X, I'm going to show you, it's 2.090. Okay, this particular item was some type of a statue on a pedestal, and it was designated as item number 7. Is that true?
That's what the photo depicts, yes. Item number 7. I'm not sure if it's depicting the pedestal or the actual statue that's a little askew up against that handrail.
Okay, was this determined eventually to be of anything of significance where it was collected and tested for any reason?
It was not collected by me or Mr. Kyle. I don't know if the detectives or the latent print unit collected it.
Did you have any understanding as to how this statute became askewed as it's photographed here in Quinn X?
Objection, I would call for speculation.
He asked him if he knows. If he knows, he can answer yes. If he doesn't know, and then if he gets yes, we'll worry about what it's based upon. Do you have any way of knowing?
I don't know.
All right.
Okay. But this was marked by somebody, and then whatever happened as far as whatever, it wasn't collected by you or Mr. Kyle. Is that true?
That's right. And again, Mr. Kyle and myself only collected items that would most likely go to the DNA section or, let's say, the possible tooth fragments. We didn't collect everything and bring it back ourselves. So I don't know anyone else at that crime scene if they collected that and brought it back to their unit.
Okay. And if I could have Quinn H put back on, which is that photograph, and then we'll get back to this one in a moment. Now this is a view of this same area of this statute, only from a little farther away. And this is Quinn H, 5 H's, HH, HHH. Is that correct?
Yeah, do I have a copy of that?
I'll show you a copy.
Okay.
And my question is, do you know when this might have been taken?
No, I can't tell from this photo when it was taken.
Okay, I want to ask you some questions. I want to not focus so much on the pedestal and the statute, but on the stairs that are depicted here. There's a white object here that looks like, do you know whether that was collected, what its significance is, of anything?
I do not know.
Okay, and with reference to these steps that are shown here, did you do any Castlemeyer testing on any spots or areas of these two steps here that are in this particular photograph, Quinn H?
I did not.
Okay. Now, if we could get Quinn X back, and it's a closer up view of it. And these two steps that I was talking about are also shown in Quinn X, and those are the same two steps that we're talking about. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Renteria, when you were there the next day, was there an object that was on this first step, a little white object or white discoloration of some type that you observed?
I don't recall.
Okay, and the picture of you standing there, which I'm looking for right now, that was a couple of exhibits back, where we determined the one that had the X's in it. Do you have that?
Yes, I do.
That I showed you? Can you give us the exhibit number, Quinn?
I think that's 5W.
Okay. In there, if you could look at the photograph, you see a little white discoloration here on this first step.
Oh, shit, balls out. Jersey Gin gifted out a membership. Drew Gambino got that son of a bitch. Nice, Drew. Oh, yeah, Jersey Gin. Appreciate that. Let me get you on here real quick, girl. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Welcome to the party.
And Drew, now you have the opportunity to see after this show, after this ends, a really cool draw.
Don't you worry.
There, it's highlighted now. I'm not sure what that is, but do you see that?
Yeah, I see something white there.
Okay, something white. We'll call it that. Was that there the day before?
I don't recall.
Okay. Was it? If it was something of significance, would you have taken note and looked at it if it meant anything to this case?
Yes.
Okay. So you didn't make any note of that. So what would be your take on what that might have been as far as its significance to the case?
Objection.
That does call for speculation, the way the question is phrased, sustained.
Let me re-ask the question this way. Had that been something that you thought might have some evidentiary value that was not there when you first went to the crime scene, but you saw the second time you went to the scene, would you have done something as far as observing that, taking note of it, and collecting it if it need be?
That's a hard question. I don't recall, first of all, seeing it there on the second day.
Okay.
I don't know if I did or if I didn't.
Okay.
So I don't know what significance to put on that.
Okay. Next in order, which is a photograph at the scene of the chair.
Quintuple Y?
Oh, shit, is it silver?
Why?
Yes.
Good catch, Patricia. Thank you for being in here.
1.266. You see the photograph here of what appears to be the decedent in the chair at the scene?
Yes.
Okay, and there's a ruler in the chair. Were you familiar with how this photograph was taken and who took it?
Does the photo you have show the writing on that? It looks like a yellow piece of paper.
You know, it looks like it's all washed out. I'll show you the photo itself. I can't really see anything there. Well, there's something. I just can't tell what it is.
Yeah, I don't specifically recall this photo being taken. I can't see the writing on the yellow piece of paper. So I don't know if I suggested that photo be taken with the ruler in place.
Can you see that now we've enlarged that little area? Does that help you at all?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my writing.
That's right. Okay, your initials are basically right there.
Yes.
Okay. And 4-3, and that you put the ruler there and you were measuring the chair.
I think I was measuring the distance of the chair leg from the bottom seat of that particular chair.
Okay, did you document that in your notes?
I don't recall if I did or not.
Do you remember documenting it being about 17 inches?
I don't recall.
Okay. Mr. Renteria, I wanted to go over just a few more items and finish up with you and ask you that were there any items that you did DNA testing on that were taken from a sexual assault kit that was collected by the coroner's office from Lana Clarkson.
Yes.
Okay, and a sexual assault kit is a group of collected samples that is done to document collection from a person's body, either a alleged sexual assault victim who's either living or dead. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And they routinely have standard type items that they collect. Isn't that true?
Yes.
Vaginal swab samples, oral swab samples, things of that nature. Isn't that true?
That's true.
Pubic hair combings, things of that nature?
Yes.
Okay, and conversely, they also have a male sexual assault kit that they can collect also. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, now with reference to Lana Clarkson, were you ever given a group of samples from some type of a sexual assault kit to test as it related to this particular case?
Yes.
And basically, were the sexual assault samples collected by Jamie Lintemoot in the coroner's office prior to the autopsy that was done?
I don't recall who specifically collected it, but it would have been collected at the coroner's office.
Okay, and are there portions of that sexual assault kit that you can do DNA testing on? In other words, are there samples that are suitable for DNA testing?
Yes.
Okay, and in this particular case, for example, they sometimes, it was your understanding, based upon being at the scene, that Ms. Clarkson had her undergarments on at the time that she was found. Is that true?
Well, actually, at the time of the scene, I think all of us there at the scene didn't know that the garment she was actually wearing under the jacket was a black slip. It looked to me, and I'm not much for fashion myself, but it looked to me to be some kind of dress. But I think at the end, once people looked at it closer, once it was offered, they determined it to be a slip.
Okay, it's been referred to as a slip dress.
Yes.
She was wearing that at the time?
Yes.
When I say undergarments, getting further from the area of undergarments in your knowledge, we're talking about like a bra? She was wearing some type of a bra?
Yeah, I believe she had a bra. She was wearing a bra and also a pair of underwear.
Okay, and basically those articles of clothing were, they were on her at the time in the place where they usually are. Let's leave it at that.
Yes.
Okay, and one of the samples that was given to you from the sexual assault kit were some swabbings of her breasts, actually, the nipple area of her breasts. Isn't that true?
Yes, they called nipple swabs. We had a swab or sampling from the right nipple and also the left nipple.
Okay, and as part of the sexual assault kit, you were given that sample to do DNA analysis on. Isn't that true?
Yes.
Okay, and did you successfully develop any DNA typing results off of that left nipple swab?
Yes.
And did you get a sole single source profile, or did you get a mixed sample from that swab?
If I may refer to my report.
Please do that.
A Lunchbowl hit the spot, though. I'll tell you that right now.
The left nipple swab from
Nice
Lana
turkey
Clarkson,
Lunchable, turkey
yielded
cheese.
a mixed profile that was consistent with 2 donors. The major donor in that sample was Lana Clarkson herself. It's her own skin surface, so one would predict that. And the minor donor, the types found, were consistent with were originating from Phil Spector.
Okay. Now, yesterday you gave some frequency calculations, likelihood ratios they're called. Is that true?
That's one form. I was giving frequency calculations.
Okay. When you looked at the profile that was consistent with Mr. Spector on the left breast swab, did you do any type of frequency calculation to determine the likelihood that it would be somebody else other than Mr. Spector?
Yes.
Okay, and can you tell the jury what that is?
Yeah, the frequency estimate in that mixed sample, the way I performed it was I had to make two assumptions to get to this number. The first assumption was there were only 2 donors present in that mixture, which is consistent with what I saw in the DNA profile. And then the second assumption is that the victim, Lana Clarkson, is one of the donors of that mixture. So there's only 1 foreign donor. So given those assumptions, the number I will give you is an estimate of the size of a randomly selected defined population of individuals, which would be expected to contain at most 1 person that would also be included into the mixture. Now, we already know Phil Spector's included into that mixture, but what's the chances of finding somebody else that would also be included? And the numbers for the Caucasian population, and we're talking about the left nipple swab now, is 14.8 billion. So what that means is I would have to, my estimate would mean I would have to look at 14.8 billion Caucasians before I would expect to find another person that would also be included.
So the inference there is that for all practical scientific purposes, Mr. Philip Spector's DNA was on that left nipple that was collected. Is that true?
I wouldn't say that. The number is slightly over the world population, which is about 6.6 billion. And usually I will have to have that frequency estimate get well above over 100 times the world's population for me to have an opinion personally that DNA came from that person.
All right, on that note, we have reached the hour. Ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind the admonition. We'll return at 1:30 this afternoon. Thank you.
All right, rocking and rolling here. 12:11. Let's see how long this next video is. Got an hour. I don't have an hour actually. So we're going to be rolling out of Murder Church right about now actually. What an awesome morning though. This has been amazing, incredible, and I think we've caught up. Let me see where we're at on the wheel for Tuesday night, where we will commence with part 7 of this dude. And again, that we'll see what the video is after that. We'll see how far we'll get Tuesday night as well. Yeah, we got 4 names into the new wheel. So if you are one of those names of the new wheel, you're going to want to come in Tuesday night. And if you're new here, welcome in. Thank you so much. If you're subscribed, hit the bell. Click the bell. Make sure you get a notification when we go live here. You're not going to want to miss it. There's a lot of cool stuff planned as we lead into Halloween, and you guys have been amazing. I love all the mods. I love all the folks. The Buzz Nation fucking rules. And yeah, we're doing the damn thing. I don't know if anybody realizes that, but we're doing the damn thing. See, I'm trying to see if I am actually... I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah, fuck. I'm forgetting something. This right here. Everybody that just got membered up. Let me get you out of here, Phil. We don't need your face right now, bud. Anybody. You see this? I'm about to drop it right now. Once I hit publish, anybody, and once I hit publish, I'll drop the link in the chat here. Once I hit publish, folks, this is available to be watched. The Historic Inman Company store. It's creepy as hell. I want your feedback in the chat. It is now live. And if you can see, I also turned off monetization because that is for the Buzz members only who are already fucking in the family. All right, you ready for this? No ads. Let me go to the video. No ads, and it's gonna be dope. Record. Check it out. Get in there. Let me know what you think. And yeah, it's pretty creepy. Love you guys. Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a great start to your week. Have a great rest of your Sunday. I know I'm gonna go try. And yeah, let's do it. Love you guys. Let's rock and roll. Boom.